You are listening to Transmigrating into the male supporting character's ex-wife on Galaxxy romance novel, where a transmigrator wakes up in the body of a discarded ex-wife. Ruan Jiu Jiu, once a cannon fodder in the novel, now opens her eyes in a world she doesn't recognize. Divorce papers are already on the table, but will she stay silent and endure, or fight to never be abandoned again? A tale of power, defiance, and a love both subtle and fierce begins right now. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and hit the bell so you won't miss what's next. Let's dive in. Skiing was a sport that was an extreme test of balance. Ruan Jiu Jiu boasts that her athletic ability was pretty good. Although she is shit in games, she can play tennis, table tennis, and badminton. It seems that there was not much connection between them. The coach was patient and gentle, probably because Chung Jun had communicated with her before, and she taught Ruan Jiu Jiu with tenderness throughout the whole process. If Ruan Jiu Jiu didn't know, she would think that the coach was teaching her lover. Ruan Jiu Jiu was uncomfortable, adjusting her movements according to the coach's instructions, and master the center of gravity. She slid down slowly, her legs inwardly, trying to slow herself down as much as possible. From a distance, Ruan Jiu Jiu's cautious movements were bewilderingly funny. She was not afraid of heights, but she's afraid of falling. The coach followed and smiled gently and said, "Little sister, was it your brother who was talking to you just now?" Ruan Jiu Jiu was taken aback. "Little sister? Yes, you don't look big." "What the hell, little sister? I'm his wife and I'm not young anymore." Ruan Jiu Jiu couldn't laugh nor cry. The coach's face changed. Just now she was gentle and careful, and she wished to hold Ruan Jiu Jiu to let her enjoy the wonderful feeling of skiing. However, when Ruan Jiu Jiu spoke, the coach's face became black and blue, and her tenderness suddenly disappeared. Ruan Jiu Jiu looked at her wonderful change of face and secretly lamented that it was another silly woman who was successfully lulled by Chung Jun's appearance. "Let's keep practicing." The coach's tone was short and concise without extra emotion. This exercise was no longer gentle and careful. Ruan Jiu Jiu successfully fell a few times in dozens of minutes, and her body was covered with snow. The coach frowned and said angrily, "Why are you so stupid?" Obviously, the ski resort was full of novice skiers. Ruan Jiu Jiu's progress was not bad, but the coach looks impatient, her hands on her shoulders, and starts to play with her phone. Ruan Jiu Jiu held back. After all, it was Chung Jun who had spent the money, and if they quarrel, they won't even listen to others, which was totally unreasonable. No matter how disputes were on other people's turf, they are in a weak position. Ruan Jiu Jiu doesn't want to make them both unhappy because of such a small problem. She stood up silently and continued to practice skiing. She fell to the ground and slammed into a pit. Ruan Jiu Jiu fell into disarray and was a little confused. At this moment, she heard a not-so-clear laugh above her head. "Ha!" No need to guess, it was 100% Chung Jun. Just when Ruan Jiu Jiu was struggling, he had already skid back and forth a few times, and it seemed that he had come to ski frequently. Ruan Jiu Jiu raised her head expressionlessly. "Do you want to die?" Chung Jun took off his goggles and asked slowly, "Was it fun?" "It's not going to be fun anymore, I always fall." "Where did you fall?" "Ass, knees, elbows. In fact, there is protection so it doesn't hurt that much, but I almost twisted my foot." Ruan Jiu Jiu patted the snow on her body, looking like she won't stop until she reached her goal. "I'll continue to practice. You go play." She flopped and failed to stand up. Chung Jun stretched out a hand. "Grab." In the middle of white snow, the ends of his hair were blown by the wind, and his face was plain and cold. It is ridiculously good to see that this snow had become a background that sets him off. For a moment, Ruan Jiu Jiu's heartbeat skipped a beat, and her eyes flickered. Fortunately, her face was covered so tightly that Chung Jun couldn't see anything. Ruan Jiu Jiu reached out and took his hand. Both of them were wearing thick gloves, and Ruan Jiu Jiu was separated by 2 layers of gloves, but it was as if she could feel his reassuring body heat. For fear that Chung Jun would be a straight man and let her fall down halfway, Ruan Jiu Jiu took support in the ground with one hand and held Chung Yun's hand tightly with her other hand. Ruan Jiu Jiu was pulled up by Chung Jun. The snowboard under her feet was heavy and dense, and her center of gravity was unstable. Hurriedly threw herself in Chung Jun's arms. Chung Jun staggered and hugged her steadily. "Ruan Jiu Jiu, don't call me heavy." "Chung Jun, Your helmet hit my chin. Ruan Jiu Jiu. I'm sorry. The coach who came to face Chongjun was gentle again. Just now when the coach lowered her head to play with her mobile phone, Ruan Jiu Jiu fell to the snow. She originally planned to wait for Ruan Jiu Jiu to get up. Who would have expected Chongjun to move faster and help Ruan Jiu Jiu up? Why are you so careless? She gave a sarcastic laugh. With this kind of attitude, don't teach others. Chongjun's words were so cold that he embarrassed the coach. She had a lot of connections and she just messed through every day teaching girls and children, and she was also very impatient when she encounters Ruan Jiu Jiu, who was so serious and stubborn. Relying on the fact that her uncle was the owner of the ski resort, her face was also a bit ugly. I'm sorry, you are not qualified to decide whether I teach others here. So, what if they have money? The ski resort was chartered by a super rich big boss. Her uncle was working for the big boss. This kind of people who can't even go to the private ski resort and can't ski had been automatically positioned as a poor person who was at the well-off level. Even if she makes trouble, they can't do anything to her. Ruan Jiu Jiu originally didn't want to pay attention to this coach. However, she didn't want her to be so rude at Chongjun, and a fire called displeasure surged into her heart. Ruan Jiu Jiu originally didn't want to pay attention to this coach. However, she didn't want her to be so rude at Chongjun, and a fire called displeasure surged into her heart. She coldly grimaced. With the way you speak, you don't believe that I will really complain about you? Then go make a complaint about it. Should I call the people here? Before they could argue, the coach already took out her phone and called someone. Ruan Jiu Jiu was afraid that she would directly call a group of people to make trouble. Chongjun acted faster than her. He guarded Ruan Jiu Jiu behind him and pulled her arm. It's okay. The ski resort manager soon came. When the manager heard the news that his niece was causing trouble again, he was a little impatient and could only dash to the scene. He had already spoken to one of the coaches and instructed him to try to be nice to the people later, and extend the people's training session by half an hour. Until the manager came closer and clearly saw the appearance of the man who had taken off his goggles, his face suddenly turned pale. Although there were pictures of Chongjun circulating on the internet, they were all vague and unclear. After the name was revealed, almost all of them were deleted. Normal people can't recognize the person. However, he worked here for 5 years and he can remember who the big boss was when he saw him. His lips trembled. Old boss. The coach was stunned and so did Ruan Jiu Jiu. Ruan Jiu Jiu looked at Chongjun in amazement. This is also Jia. This land belongs to me. Ruan Jiu Jiu? Including the hotel. Ruan Jiu Jiu. The coach, who was still proud of herself, turned into a frosted eggplant in an instant and regretted it. Boss, why didn't you inform me when you came? This matter today. Solve it the way you should. Compared to Ruan Jiu Jiu's shocked face, Chongjun looked much calmer. He didn't even bother to look. Let's go. The ski manager trembled as he watched the two go away. The coach behind him was pale and stammered. Uncle, what about me? You go away, you'll only add more troubles for me. He glanced at his ignorant niece with anger. Pack your things and get out of here. Didn't you promise my mother that you would let me stay here forever? She refused to comply. With a crying tone, she tried to convince her uncle to let go in a spoiled way. Just kidding. Where can I find a job with tens of thousands of dollars every day for a month, even though I always mess things up? Her usually well-tempered uncle had an angry look on his face. Promise, my ass. If you don't go, I'll have to go. Ruan Jiu Jiu followed Chongjun, moving with difficulty, and asked, This was actually your land? I can't imagine that a person like Chongjun, who looks like he doesn't know how to enjoy himself, would be very capitalistic and would buy a large piece of land. Ruan Jiu Jiu was shocked. Chongjun gave a hmm. The land was bought a few years ago. He didn't come here to ski often and was somewhat wasteful, so he simply changed it to a resort, which turned out to be quite profitable over the years. Where are we going now? Skiing. Ruan Jiu Jiu? Huh. I'll teach you. Chongjun took Ruan Jiu Jiu step by step upward and stopped at a small hill. He stood beside her and motioned Ruan Jiu Jiu to stand still, and then he spoke the main points slowly. The most common mistake for novices was getting the center of gravity wrong. Chongjun corrected Ruan Jiu Jiu's movements while speaking, just like an experienced coach. His speed of speech was not fast nor slow, and his expression was easy to understand. Ruan Jiu Jiu's confusion dispelled like a fog, and it was the area where she didn't understand. Ruan Jiu Jiu followed the movements taught by Chang Jun, sliding her feet slowly and smoothly down the slope of the mountain. She screamed in excitement and then forgot to control her balance. Fell flat on her face when Ruan Jiu Jiu heard a click. She was shocked. She hurriedly sat up and saw Chang Jun looking at his phone with satisfaction. That angle was very good. Ruan Jiu Jiu, what did you take? Look. On the screen of the mobile phone was a clear picture. Ruan Jiu Jiu in an embarrassing position flopped down on the snow. It was very funny. The worst part was, Ruan Jiu Jiu was furious. Stop right there. Who allowed you to set it as a screensaver? Other people's screensavers were little fairies, while the photo on Chang Jun's mobile phone was of a fairy who fell from the sky onto the ground. In order to save her face, Ruan Jiu Jiu stood up to grab Chang Jun's phone. The skis on her foot were too heavy to move, and if Chang Jun dodges, Ruan Jiu Jiu will definitely fall again. After he retreated, Ruan Jiu Jiu successfully threw him to the ground. Their bodies hit the soft snow with no pain at all, and the splashed snow foam slipped into their clothes, making them tremble in cold. Ruan Jiu Jiu fell on Chang Jun, and the only she can see is Chang Jun's phone. She reached out her arms and quickly grabbed it, but Chang Jun dodged it. You're still arguing with me. Ruan Jiu Jiu struggled to grab his arm and unknowingly, she pressed on Chang Jun's body. Her face was close to Chang Jun's lips, and her breath hit his face as if the heat from her body was transferring to Chang Jun's body. Ruan Jiu Jiu didn't notice that Chang Jun's face was getting redder and redder. He turned his face away and loosened the strength in his hands. Ruan Jiu Jiu finally managed to snatch Chang Jun's phone. The first thing she did after she got the phone was deleting the photo, and the second thing was to change the screensaver. The photo was deleted resolutely, and Ruan Jiu Jiu was making happy noises, only to find that Chang Jun was motionless and was playing dead. Ruan Jiu Jiu, you shouldn't be angry anymore? Why are you so petty? Chang Jun? Jun. Chang Jun didn't know when he covered his face tightly. Ruan Jiu Jiu wanted to remove his goggles but was avoided by Chang Jun. Ruan Jiu Jiu asked, really angry? Well, can I compensate you for another photo? She laid on Chang Jun's shoulder and turned on the front camera. Apple's front camera was really a magic mirror, and Ruan Jiu Jiu could clearly see a trace of acne on her forehead. She raised her hand depressed and let Chang Jun stay in the camera. Two people, one of them was wearing a helmet and goggles with collars up, covering his face tightly, and one showing a bright smiling face, with peach blossom eyes curved into two beautiful crescents. In the next second, their photo was captured at this moment. Ruan Jiu Jiu set the photo as a screensaver and returned the phone contentedly. Chang Jun took back his phone in silence. Ruan Jiu Jiu was about to laugh at him when two middle-aged couples passing by gave a tsk. Young people now. That's right, what are they doing outside in broad daylight? Ruan Jiu Jiu. She realized that they were indeed acting somewhat intimate outside, so she hurriedly sat up. Chang Jun took a long time to relax and slowly sat up with one hand on the snow. Along the way, he appeared to be much more silent than usual, but Ruan Jiu Jiu had long been used to his less talkative character, and only treated him as expressing his aggravation of being bullied. The two returned to the hotel. Ruan Jiu Jiu planned to soak in the hot spring at night. The price of the hotel's hot springs was calculated separately and was not cheap. If it weren't for Chang Jun being the boss, Ruan Jiu Jiu would really get hurts when she sees the price. Do you want to go together? Chang Jun's expression shows that Ruan Jiu Jiu was being unreasonable. Men and women should separate. Ruan Jiu Jiu, you misunderstood. She just wanted to go out together. Chang Jun was not interested in hot springs at all, especially in places where other people might appear. But when he looked at Ruan Jiu Jiu's happy face, waiting for him with a small bag, he couldn't say words of refusal. Let's go. There's still something to eat while bathing in the hot spring. Chang Jun rubbed his eyebrows, allowed Ruan Jiu Jiu to drag him to the hot spring room. The hot spring was on the highest floor, not far from their room. Once inside, there was only staff responsible for keeping things and guarding the female bath door. Then I'll go in first. Okay. Ruan Jiu Jiu went to the locker room to change her clothes and found that a small locker was locked, and there was probably a person inside the hot spring. Wrapped in a bath towel, she opened the curtain, and the steaming hot air hit her face, causing Ruan Jiu Jiu to squint slightly. At this time she heard a familiar voice. Jiu Jiu. Eh. Ruan Jiu Jiu looked at the hot spring pool in surprise. There was already a person soaking inside. Her hair curled up into small balls, a baby face with a surprised smile, and quickly beckoned to Ruan Jiu Jiu. It's me, White Dragon Horse. It was a great coincidence that the two would meet in such a place. Ruan Jiu Jiu was soaking in the hot spring, feeling the warm water temperature, and she narrowed her eyes comfortably. After listening to Bai Long's one explanation for a long time, she figured out what was going on. It turns out that Bai Long was about to get engaged. This trip of the two was an engagement trip. When they get back, they will have to prepare for the marriage. This trip was not cheap, and the accommodation cost a lot. Bai Long came from a good family, but when it comes to the cost, it still hurts. I said not to go to the hot springs, but that guy said that it was hard to come here and just enjoy it. Although it was a complaint, the words were sweet and sweetly burdensome, so to speak. Ruan Jiu Jiu asked, by the way, how long are you staying? We're going back tomorrow. We have to hurry up and catch New Year's Eve dinner together. This year, the two families will have dinner together. Then, congratulations in advance, Ruan Jiu Jiu said with a smile. Don't forget to call me when you get married. Of course. You have to sit at the friends and family table, and if you're not married, I'll even make you my bridesmaid. Speaking of this, Bai Long came to the spirit. She poured half a glass of red wine for Ruan Jiu Jiu and asked eagerly, by the way, you have been married and have experience. Can you tell me what wedding precautions I should take note of? Ruan Jiu Jiu suddenly fell into an awkward silence. She had no experience of having a wedding. She was a single dog before transmigrating over. However, if talking about being a bridesmaid, Ruan Jiu Jiu would be able to write 100 experiences. Bai Long was still waiting for Ruan Jiu Jiu to pass on her experience. Ruan Jiu Jiu took a sip of the red wine and vaguely said, someone else will take care of everything. You are mostly just adjusting to being in the best shape for the wedding. You're right. Bai Long squeezed her belly and frowned sadly. He was big-hearted and generous, and I have gained weight recently. Looking at the appearance of the little girl, Ruan Jiu Jiu couldn't help but smile. The conversation between the two of them continued for a while, and Ruan Jiu Jiu sharply noticed several red marks on Bai Long's shoulder blades, as well on her neck. She was a little surprised and said, you have a rash? Was soaking in hot water not good for your body? Bai Long blushed. Don't make fun of me. I hate it. Don't say you don't have little strawberries. Ruan Jiu Jiu was taken aback and suddenly understood what Bai Long meant. She also blushed and tried to change the subject with a dry cough, but Bai Long interrupted her. Bai Long suddenly looked at her from head to toe, as if a police officer was examining a prisoner. Her gaze was like a torch, and it made Ruan Jiu Jiu's scalp numb. What are you looking at? Wow, you guys aren't quite right. Do old couples don't make love when they go on vacation? Ruan Jiu Jiu naturally wanted to maintain their marriage and subconsciously retorted, how is it possible? We did it yesterday. Oh, where was it? In the bathroom or the bed? Fortunately, they were soaked in hot water, and they couldn't see Ruan Jiu Jiu's whole body and toes were red, like a cooked shrimp. Ruan Jiu Jiu quickly prevented Bai Long from going deeper into the topic. Old husband and wife, there's nothing to talk about. Listen to me, if two people stayed together for a long time, there will inevitably be no novelty, which is normal. Although I and my husband is not married yet, we have been together for 4 or 5 years. Bai Long's face had a cryptic look. Sometimes I have to take the initiative, I tell you. Ruan Jiu Jiu was brainwashed by Bai Long's bombardment for more than an hour. It wasn't until her skin was soaked and wrinkled, the tip of her nose was itchy, and looked like she was about to have a nosebleed on the way out. Ruan Jiu Jiu's head was full of Bai Long's various magic tricks. After a few seconds of brainstorming in her brain, her face became redder. She closed her eyes and shook her head vigorously, trying to get rid of Bai Long's brainwashing. Cheng Jun, who was sitting in a chair and waiting, saw Ruan Jiu Jiu's weird look. Ruan Jiu Jiu cleared her throat. Let's go. The usual Cheng Jun's hair was slightly curly and slightly fluffy and messy. With a hoodie and a pair of eternally weary eyes, he looks lazy and had no energy. At this moment, he was wearing a bathrobe tied by the belt. His body was slender. His hair was wet and was stroked behind his ears. He was so tired that he was a little bit fiercer and sexier. In Ruan Jiu Jiu's line of sight, unexpectedly he looked a little bit sexy. Ruan Jiu Jiu. When the two returned to the hotel room, Ruan Jiu Jiu sneezed. She rubbed her nose and poured a glass of warm water to drink. The snow outside the window was getting heavier, and the sky was full of snowflakes like rusty paper scattered on the ground. Standing by the window looking out, the endless silver stretches without end. Ruan Jiu Jiu stood by the window and watched the snow. After calming down, her slightly flushed cheeks finally returned to normal. I met Bai Long today, a friend I met when playing online games. Her boyfriend was also in the hot spring pool. Did you saw him? Chung Jun gave out a hmm. Do you guys have a chat? Did you get along well? Yeah. After receiving Chung Jun's answer, Ruan Jiu Jiu continued. That's good. She invited us to have breakfast and lunch together at noon tomorrow, and they will leave and return home in the afternoon. Is it okay? Chung Jun was peeling the red pomelo seriously, without raising his head, and said, okay. Ruan Jiu Jiu sat on the sofa and turned on the TV. Soap operas at this point were rampant. She randomly clicked on a family ethical drama and watched it with boredom. Chung Jun slowly peeled the pomelo and handed half of it to Ruan Jiu Jiu, and the two ate the pomelo together harmoniously. There was a notification sound from a mobile phone, which was a WeChat message from Ruan Jiu Jiu's phone. Ruan Jiu Jiu took a glance and saw that it was Bai Long's voice message. She was too busy eating the pomelo, so she used her little finger to tap at it. Bai Long's cheerful voice sounded. Jojo, remember my method. Tonight must be deep water, yo. Cough, cough, cough. Ruan Jiu Jiu coughed hard, rushed to turn off the voice message. The voice message that was originally ended by Ruan Jiu Jiu started again. Chung Jun cast a faint gaze and silently asked Ruan Jiu Jiu. Nothing. Ruan Jiu Jiu had two big heads. Ruan Jiu Jiu thought that tomorrow Bai Long would definitely stare at the two of them with weird eyes, and maybe even ask Ruan Jiu Jiu why she hadn't been planted with small strawberries. Thinking about it, she became even more troubled. Ruan Jiu Jiu was in a daze while looking at her mobile phone and even forgot to eat the pomelo. While she was not paying attention, Chung Jun silently reached out and broke off 2 pieces of pomelo and continued to eat. Hey! Chung Jun, who was caught, was very eager to survive. Give back to you. Ruan Jiu Jiu. What are you talking about? Chung Jun. Huh? Have you eaten your pomelo yet? Chung Jun looked at her. What's the matter? To avoid a little trouble, how about we take a vacation? Ruan Jiu Jiu moved to his side, staring strangely at Chung Jun. And be a fruit farmer. Chung Jun. Want to grow vegetables? Plant fruits. Under Chung Jun's suspicious gaze, Ruan Jiu Jiu suddenly sat upright and put one hand on his shoulder. Reflexively, Chung Jun's back stiffened into a straight line and watched Ruan Jiu Jiu poking out her hand, touching his throat. Her fingers were soft and cold, with a sweet and astringent smell of pomelo skin, and she rubbed her fingers back and forth around his neck a few times. Those eyes were sincere and innocent as a teenage girl, unaware of what she was doing at the moment. His Adam's apple rolled up and down, and his voice suddenly fell a few keys. What are you doing? Ruan Jiu Jiu was focused on looking for a good place to start. Chung Jun didn't have much soft flesh on his body. His neck was slender, and his collarbone was unusually obvious. In this case, a pinch would be very painful. Ruan Jiu Jiu said with a profound expression. If you let me pinch it, it will be considered as a contribution for the two of us. Chung Jun. Question mark. Her plump and round nails stayed on Chung Jun's right neck. She then suddenly erected her nails, pinched a small piece of soft flesh, and twisted it to the right. Ruan Jiu Jiu did this kind of work for the first time, but her hands were not strong, and they were trembling a little. It was as if a mosquito was biting her body and sniffing the fragrant smell of her body. She raised her face, her round red lips opened slightly because of too much concentration, revealing her pink tongue. Chung Jun looked at her, unable to move as if possessed. His breathing suddenly became heavy. Ruan Jiu Jiu retracted her hand and watched the reddish skin gradually fade, finally returning to its original whiteness. Ah! She sighed disappointedly. By how it looks, not to mention leaving a mark, there was not even a bit of red. What are you doing? He asked slowly in a hoarse voice. To prevent Bai Long from always being curious about my sex life, I wanted to make some artificial small strawberries to dispel her curiosity. Ruan Jiu Jiu's expression was serious, and she didn't notice that Chang Jun's expression was not quite right. Is there any way? It's best to be seen when we eat together tomorrow. Would you like me to pinch harder? Can you endure it? Chang Jun said. It's useless. If you want such an effect, it's better to scratch my neck. Ruan Jiu Jiu had to admit that this seemed like a good way. She stretched out her hand to measure left and right. She was surprised that she could not find a good place to start. Her fingernails swept across his collarbone lightly, just like a kitten scratching a person, with little energy and a touch of teasing itch. In the eyes of others, it almost looks like a flirting caress. Forget it, I can't do it. If she did it, there would be few bloody lines left in his neck, and after thinking about it, Ruan Jiu Jiu thought it will hurt a lot. If Tu Nan saw it, he might misunderstand it, so she'd better not make trouble for herself. Ruan Jiu Jiu stood up and said, I'd better go back to my room to sleep. She went back to her bedroom, but after a while, she heard the sound of splashing water and thought that Chang Jun was probably taking a shower. Ruan Jiu Jiu tossed and turned and was not able to sleep. Her eyes fell at the soft drink on the bedside table. Suddenly her eyes lit up and she had an idea. The sound of the splashing water disappeared. Ruan Jiu Jiu jumped off the bed, wore her slippers, ran to Chang Jun's bedroom door briskly, and stepped into the door as she opened her mouth. I'm telling you, I thought of one good way. Chang Jun's bedroom curtain was drawn, and inside the room only the bedside lamp was turned on, and the light was dim. He was changing clothes with his back turned to Ruan Jiu Jiu. He was only wearing long trousers, and his upper body was exposed unobstructed. From Ruan Jiu Jiu's angle, she can see a strong and smooth back, a narrow waistline and slender powerful arms. Ruan Jiu Jiu probably didn't expect to bump into the scene of Chang Jun changing clothes, and she didn't expect that Chang Jun would have such a good figure. For a while, she froze in place and forgot what she was going to talk about. Chang Jun slowly put on his pajamas with his back at her. His hair dripping with water, slid down to his shoulder blades, and finally disappeared into his sunken waistline. Ruan Jiu Jiu only felt hot on her face and panicked, and her nose was also on fire as if a nosebleed was gushing. She subconsciously covered her nose and rubbed it, which made her feel more comfortable. Holding the straw in her hand, and the fever on her cheeks went down, Ruan Jiu Jiu continued, I have found a good way, let's try it? Chang Jun turned his body in silence and walked slowly to Ruan Jiu Jiu with his expressionless face. A pair of slender eyes lowered, thick and slender eyelashes, and she couldn't discern his expression. With his back facing the dim light, the room suddenly became dimmer, and Ruan Jiu Jiu almost couldn't see the emotion in his eyes. Chang Jun took a step forward, and Ruan Jiu Jiu subconsciously took a step back, slamming her back against the cold wall, and only then did she calm down. What are you doing? Don't scare me, I'm not afraid of ghosts. Chang Jun frowned as if he was holding back a certain agitated mood. This was very different from his usual calm and indifferent personality. Don't come in at times like this. At times like this? Ruan Jiu Jiu raised her head blankly. Chang Jun didn't look like he had just taken a shower. There was no steaming heat coming from his body, but cold and icy. Even his breath was cold like a rain shower. You took a cold shower? Why take a cold shower in winter? Are you not afraid of catching a cold? Chang Jun's hair fell, hitting Ruan Jiu Jiu's cheek, and she shivered with the cold. Chang Jun, with one hand in his pocket, stretched out his other hand to gently wipe off the drops of water on Ruan Jiu Jiu's cheeks. Compared to Ruan Jiu Jiu's soft fingertips, his fingers were rougher and itchy on her soft cheeks, which made Ruan Jiu Jiu uncomfortably turned away. I'll wipe it myself. Her chin was suddenly pinched. Ruan Jiu Jiu was taken aback. Chang Jun, a dog man, dared to pinch her chin? She didn't want to live anymore. Ruan Jiu Jiu was on the verge of anger, suddenly raised her head, and in front of her was a magnified handsome face. Chang Jun slowly wiped off the water droplets on her face. She didn't know if it was because of the light. His voice was a bit muffled, stained with a color called lust. You can't wipe the water droplets clean by yourself. Similarly, in planting strawberries, one person can't do it alone. This scene was extremely ambiguous. There was a faint fresh smell of bathing on Chang Jun's body, infused with the coldness of the water. As his body got closer, the indescribable good smell enveloped Ruan Jiu Jiu. Ruan Jiu Jiu was stunned. Does this dog man want to take advantage of me? Should I hide? Or should I not? He promised that they will go on a blind date, but this progress was too fast. Am I ready to hug and kiss him if he kisses me and wants to go one step further? Ruan Jiu Jiu's heart was engaged in a battle between heaven and earth, which makes her feel very complicated. She didn't notice her change. In the past, if Chang Jun had such behavior, she would have slapped him till his soul left his body, so there's no way she would allow him to pinch her chin. The low-hanging hair on his forehead slightly covered his eyelids, adding a few unexplainable emotions to Chang Jun's eye. He released her hand, lowered his head, and moved closer to Ruan Jiu Jiu's face. Ruan Jiu Jiu obviously realized something. She dodged away from Chang Jun's gaze, her body staggered backward, and her cheeks flushed with tension. However, panic and overwhelm were obviously in her eyes. Chang Jun's body halted. What are you going to do? Ruan Jiu Jiu was like an agitated little beast with hair standing up and with teeth and claws on the outward. His body got closer. Ruan Jiu Jiu couldn't wait to stick tightly to the wall and become one with it. At this moment, she felt Chang Jun's fingertips fall on her soft and delicate neck. Just lightly rubbing, Ruan Jiu Jiu's hair stood up, and a layer of fine goosebumps appeared. Her ears were uncomfortably itchy, making her want to scratch it hard. The next second, a sudden and intense pain came from her neck, causing Ruan Jiu Jiu to let out a painful cry. The culprit was of course Chang Jun, the most invincible strongest man in the universe. He actually took advantage of Ruan Jiu Jiu's defenselessness and pinched and twisted the soft flesh on her neck. Ruan Jiu Jiu burst into tears from the pain. She was so shocked that when she came back to her senses, she stared angrily at Chang Jun. She didn't expect that at such an ambiguous time, he would make such a shocking action. What are you doing? Chang Jun retracted his hand, put both hands in his pockets, stood up straight and said slowly, being a fruit farmer. One Ruan Jiu Jiu. She became angrier. She was so angry that she wanted to immediately take out their marriage certificate and divorce Chang Jun, so that this dogman could go and screw himself. Ruan Jiu Jiu originally thought of a good way. She wanted to help each other with the straws and suck out a few fake strawberries with the straws to make a trick of it. Who could have expected that Chang Jun's actions would leave her head blank for a while, almost forgetting what she was doing. At this time, fruit farmer Chang Jun lowered his head and leaned in front of Ruan Jiu Jiu. It's your turn. Ruan Jiu Jiu fell into silence. It seems that Chang Jun was doing the fruit farmer very seriously. Ruan Jiu Jiu let out a breath of anger. Chang Jun was very cooperative and motionless, letting Ruan Jiu Jiu find a good angle. She pinched a piece of skin near his collarbone and twisted it vigorously. Chang Jun's face was indifferent the whole time, and when he was pinched, he just looked at her silently, almost making Ruan Jiu Jiu think that her strength was weak. When her hand let go, there was a little red strawberry. Ruan Jiu Jiu breathed a sigh of relief. Okay, think of it as a payback. Chang Jun, with a serious expression, said, a red dot on a person would appear like a mosquito bite and would be very symmetrical. It will not look real. So what? Do you want more? Yes. The pain that Ruan Jiu Jiu felt at that moment just now was still fresh in her memory. She took a step back vigilantly and said, don't mess around. Chang Jun said slowly, rock, paper, scissors. Ruan Jiu Jiu. Huh. Ruan Jiu Jiu thought that her luck was not bad. She used to occasionally play rock, paper, scissors with friends, and she won quite a few times. Ruan Jiu Jiu's self-confidence suddenly lit up. She stood up straight and said, rock, paper, scissors or rock, paper, scissors, come. If whoever wins, they will pinch the opponent's neck for a total of 3 rounds. Only the two of them could think of such a cruel way to grow strawberries. Ruan Jiu Jiu held her breath and watched Chang Jun's gestures nervously. The two of them faced each other in silence. Ruan Jiu Jiu clenched her fists so nervously and said, 1, 2, 3. Ruan Jiu Jiu's was scissors, Chang Jun's was paper. I won. Ruan Jiu Jiu's eyes were shining, and she quickly made Chang Jun lower his head. Quickly, I'm going to plant strawberries. Chang Jun lowered his head. Ruan Jiu Jiu chose around his shoulder blades and successfully left a small strawberry. Ruan Jiu Jiu happily raised her hand to prepare for the second round of rock, paper, scissors. 1, 2, 3. Ruan Jiu Jiu was taken aback. I won again. Chang Jun snorted but was not surprised. He lowered his head and continued to let Ruan Jiu Jiu plant strawberries. Ruan Jiu Jiu pinched and saw 3 red little strawberries on his neck. Suddenly her conscience came back, and was a little embarrassed. I pinched you twice, so you do the same. Chungjun. Okay. Ruan Jiu Jiu. ? She was just politely suggesting. After saying that, Ruan Jiu Jiu gritted her teeth and moved her head over so that Chungjun could choose a good place to plant strawberries. She closed her eyes and wrinkled her brows, ready for the sudden tingling sensation. Silence. The silence continued. Ruan Jiu Jiu could vaguely feel Chungjun's steady breathing above her head, but she did not feel the other party's movements. She quietly opened one eye but saw Chungjun walking towards the sofa. What are you going to do? Ruan Jiu Jiu was suddenly shocked. Could it be to find tools? Chungjun. You think too much. He picked up a bottle of herbal tea, opened it, and poured half of it silently. Ruan Jiu Jiu. Not going to plant strawberries anymore. Fruit farmer? Chungjun didn't turn back and said in a warm tone. Save it for next time. Ruan Jiu Jiu went back to her room to sleep. She sat in front of the vanity mirror and took a closer look. At first glance, the red dot on her neck indeed looked like a small strawberry. Ruan Jiu Jiu's face blushed, and he was a little embarrassed. The thought that Bai Long would wink at her tomorrow made her even more embarrassed and suddenly felt that this was not a good idea. However, when all is said and done, only Chungjun allowed her to fool around like this. Her mind remembered when Chungjun was standing in front of her. At that moment, his expression seemed to be a little bit different from the past, and she couldn't tell what it was. Forget it. Ruan Jiu Jiu waved her hand and slapped away the nonsense in her mind. Tomorrow she had to get up and put on makeup, so she had to go to bed early. Lying on the bed, Ruan Jiu Jiu turned over and gradually slept. In another room, the heavy curtains were tightly drawn, and Chungjun was lying on the bed, without the slightest sense of sleep. As soon as he closed his eyes, Ruan Jiu Jiu's soft skin, rosy lips, and jade-like shoulder blades appeared on his mind, making him wonder how it would feel when his hands are pressed against them. Presumably it will be very nice. He turned over and couldn't sleep even more. The next day, Ruan Jiu Jiu got up in high spirits and put on makeup, but something was not quite right. The woman on the opposite side of the mirror had picturesque eyebrows, her skin was clean, white as a mutton jade. She doesn't even have pores, just light makeup was enough to add color. But Ruan Jiu Jiu felt that something was very wrong and couldn't help but fall into contemplation. It seems something was missing. Ruan Jiu Jiu carefully looked up and down, and finally found something wrong. She was shocked to find out that the little strawberry was gone. Gone. Chungjun, Chungjun. She quickly got up and called Chungjun's name. Chungjun, dressed in loose pajamas, rubbed his sleepy eyes and followed the sound out of the bedroom door. Ruan Jiu Jiu tugged down his arm, pulled open Chungjun's collar, and tiptoed to observe. Chungjun decided to give up resisting, letting her look, and helped Ruan Jiu Jiu to pull the collar to make it more convenient for her. Ruan Jiu Jiu looked for it hopelessly for a long time, and sure enough, the place that she pinched had already returned to normal, and there was nothing left. Oh my god! Ruan Jiu Jiu cried. Chungjun. ? Tell me, why did I work so hard last night for? Mrs. Xianglin suddenly came out with a sullen and heavy expression, and she slowly walked towards her room. I'm so stupid. Chungjun. I didn't even know that the pinch will not last the next day. Do you think it's because we used too little strength? Chungjun was strangely silent for a few seconds and then said slowly, perhaps. Of course he knew. Bai Long and Wei Tian were on the plane at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and by the time they had eaten together, they were ready to catch their flight back. Ruan Jiu Jiu arrived at the restaurant early with Chungjun at the time Bai Long said. Fortunately, there was a private room, and it was easier for them to talk. She was wearing a loose-knit sweater with a skirt and lambskin boots, and a silk scarf was tied around her neck, which makes her swan-like neck more slender and graceful. As a woman, Bai Long immediately caught the scarf at her neck. You chose a very good silk scarf today. Ruan Jiu Jiu smiled knowingly and said, Is your lipstick tomato-colored? Ah, you noticed it too. Ah, my man thought I was wearing ants red. Ruan Jiu Jiu smiled. In contrast, Wei Tian was much more anxious. That day in the hot spring pool was not bad environment, Chungjun explained to Ruan Jiu Jiu. When Chungjun opened the curtain and walked in, Wei Tian was squinting and enjoying. The first time he saw Chung Jun, he was stunned for a moment and was inexplicably nervous with those slender eyes staring at him. Soon after, the man turned back and went into the bathroom. Wei Tian soaked in the hot spring until night, but the other party never came in again. Who could have expected that the other party turned out to be the big boss of Jiaqing? Or List? As a straight man, Wei Tian had only one thought in his mind. Mom, I actually saw List's half-naked body. Ruan Jiu Jiu wondered as she noticed that Wei Tian was blushing, and she kindly said, "If you think the temperature of the air conditioner is too high, you can turn it down a little bit." No need. In contrast, Bai Long, although very excited, had an IQ. She barely managed to maintain her calmness, but she politely asked Ruan Jiu Jiu to choose the dishes, with the expression of, "I am very happy to eat grass" at this moment on her face, which made Ruan Jiu Jiu feel awkward. Wei Tian was even more exaggerated. He peeked at Chung Jun from time to time like a shy little girl. His eyes flickered, and the temperature on his face never went down. Sometimes when Chung Jun was impatiently stared at, he would glance at Wei Tian. Wei Tian was just as excited as someone who was called out by their idol, until they started to fantasize in their heads. Even Bai Long couldn't stand it anymore, kicked her boyfriend secretly and whispered, "Are you not ashamed? Be serious." Okay. When the two of them faced Chung Jun, they were careful and cautious, for fear that they would say the wrong thing, or wear a wrong expression that would make the boss unhappy. Who would have expected that Chung Jun would be very easygoing and approachable the entire time? Although he only nodded at the two symbolically at the beginning and sat on his seat in an impenetrable manner, which made the pressure that the two of them felt multiply, and before they would say something, they would think about whether their words are appropriate. But soon, the two found out that Chung Jun did not show any unhappiness, or one could say that his focus was not on the two of them at all. Oh, seems that they had been completely ignored. Gradually, they sat down and became more comfortable. The two realized that the boss did not pay attention to their words, so they relaxed and were no longer as cautious as they were at the beginning. The meal was extremely peaceful, and the topic mainly revolved around Bai Long and Ruan Jiu Jiu. Chung Jun remained silent and did not say a word from beginning to end, while Wei Tian was afraid that he would tremble as soon as he spoke, so he simply stuffed food into his mouth, restraining himself from wanting to rush up to hug his idol. "We'll stay engaged until after the new year. The wedding is scheduled at the end of March. Just the right time to get married, and you go on a honeymoon." "Where are you going on your honeymoon?" "Haven't thought about it yet. I said to go to South America, but he thinks that it's too chaotic. Security issues really need attention," Ruan Jiu Jiu said with a smile. Bai Long said, "It's okay, we can spend our honeymoon anywhere. Anyway, I have already played to the places where I want to play. The important thing is the mood when two people are together." "The important thing is the mood when two people are together?" Ruan Jiu Jiu glanced at Chung Jun subconsciously but was caught straight by the other person. She raised her glass and took a sip of juice because of embarrassment. Bai Long noticed the small movements of the two people, almost overwhelming her teenage heart. She held her face and said enviously, "That's nice. I hope that after a few years of our marriage, Wei Tian and I will have such a good relationship." Cough cough. Ruan Jiu Jiu almost choked while drinking juice. "Which I did Bai Long see that the two of us had a good relationship. This dogman pinched me yesterday." Halfway through the meal, Ruan Jiu Jiu couldn't eat anymore. She casually ate her salad and continued to chat with Bai Long. Bai Long's topic began to involve the question of how children should be raised in the future. Ruan Jiu Jiu didn't think so much about it. Seeing Bai Long's longing look, she touched her nose and suddenly felt that this was a real marriage. Actively and calmly, holding hands with the lover, and stepped into the marriage hall together. They gained more parents, and yet they were very happy. Chung Jun's slow voice sounded, "Can't eat anymore?" Ruan Jiu Jiu froze for a moment. "Huh." Then she realized that Chung Jun was staring at her unfinished steak and said, "Yes, I can't eat it anymore." Chung Jun calmly took Ruan Jiu Jiu's steak, and while Bai Long and Wei Tian were staring dumbfoundedly, he cut the steak into small pieces and continued to eat slowly. Bai Long, what the fuck? That's so sweet. Wei Tian, big brother is big brother, and he eats elegantly. The two people's violent imaginations were successfully exposed on their faces. Only Ruan Jiu Jiu asked blankly, "What's wrong?" Chang Jun normally took care of the leftovers at home, including some food that Ruan Jiu Jiu couldn't finish and didn't mind her saliva. Ruan Jiu Jiu had long been accustomed to the way they get along. Unexpectedly, in the eyes of other people, it had become a proper show of affection. The big guy would actually eat his wife's leftovers in front of others. The boss must have done these many times to be so calm. The big guy is so handsome even in eating. So handsome that it's killing me. I am simply stuffed full of this dog food. Ruan Jiu Jiu. Can you two still hear me? Hello. Bai Long woke up from her dreamlike state. She looked at Chang Jun, then at Wei Tian next to her, and he was caught off guard when she slapped him. You disliked my saliva last time. I was wrong. Ruan Jiu Jiu was a little amused. How could they ever know that Chang Jun was just a foodie? Usually at home he would occasionally protect his food. Whenever Ruan Jiu Jiu tried to bully Chang Jun, he would pretend to inadvertently pick up his food. Then she would witness Mr. Chang silently moved his plate to a safe area, so that his hard-won meals would not suffer disaster. It was a meal where the host and the guests enjoyed themselves. Bai Long kicked Wei Tian and asked him to pay the bill but was stopped by Ruan Jiu Jiu. No, just consider it as our treat. That will be embarrassing, Bai Long said. The hotel belongs to Chang Jun. Ruan Jiu Jiu's act of persuasion was very straightforward. Oh. Bai Long had originally planned to persuade Ruan Jiu Jiu, but when she heard Ruan Jiu Jiu said this, she was a bit embarrassed in an instant. She retracted her hand in embarrassment and sat on her seat. Bai Long was shocked by Boss Chang's domineering aura and almost burst into tears. I'm so envious. She also wants to sleep in her hotel someday. Wei Tian beside her comforted and took Bai Long's arm and said, You will have it in the future. Wait for me to earn it for you. Bai Long snorted. I can do it myself. Ruan Jiu Jiu looked at the interaction between the two people suddenly became a little envious. A 10,000-year single dog like her. For a few seconds also wanted to talk about sweet love. Ruan Jiu Jiu's eyes fell on Chang Jun. Chang Jun ate the fruit in the platter indifferently, and even took advantage of Ruan Jiu Jiu's carelessness and stole a piece of mango from Ruan Jiu Jiu. Ruan Jiu Jiu. Can she really count on Chang Jun? It would be easier to expect that when a meteorite hits the earth all mankind will be destroyed. Bai Long picked up her bag and asked with a smile. Jiu Jiu, do you want to go to the bathroom? Oh okay. The two little sisters went to the bathroom to reapply their makeup while harmoniously holding hands. Ruan Jiu Jiu followed Bai Long through the corridor, standing side by side in front of the bathroom mirror. Ruan Jiu Jiu pulled out a lipstick from her bag and applied it carefully. Beside her, Bai Long holding a lipstick wink said, Last night was pretty good. Silk scarves were tied. This was exactly the way that Ruan Jiu Jiu thought of temporarily. It was better to show that she covered her neck. Bai Long would think about it and would think that they did something last night. Ruan Jiu Jiu gave a calm hum. It's not bad. My ass. She was pinched but she didn't get anything. Thinking back to the scene of them pinching each other last night, Ruan Jiu Jiu became even more depressed. She and Chang Jun didn't look like a couple. Who would pinch her unexpectedly like Chang Jun? People who don't know would think it was domestic violence. Bai Long sighed enviously. So good-looking, so rich, super cool and playing games, also spoiling his wife, good personality and modest, how could there be such a perfect man in the world? Ruan Jiu Jiu was shocked. Excuse me, are we talking about the same person? You just spend too much time together face to face every day that you find these points common. Bai Long put on the lipstick and put it back into her bag. Then she smiled and looked at Ruan Jiu Jiu. Wei Tian and I could see that Mr. Chang had been paying attention to your every move the whole time. Ruan Jiu Jiu, huh? How is that possible? In her impression, Chang Jun was busy eating the food on his plate. How could he have the time to pay attention to her affairs? Of course. Bai Long folded her hands together and hugged her chest, looking like a little woman. That look tiske. I really don't even have the heart to be jealous. But think about it, with such big beauty at home, a man will surely be moved. Ruan Jiu Jiu. Chang Jun, that guy, cannot simply be classified as a man. The two women in the bathroom were chatting back and forth, while there was an awkward atmosphere between the two men in the private room. The silence for a few minutes after Ruan Jiu Jiu and Bai Long left made time a little bit difficult. Wei Tian pulled his hand and scratched his head. In the past he didn't like to chat nor crack a game by himself, and would simply play on his phone and was too lazy to pay attention to others, but at the moment sitting in front of him was Chongjun. Not to mention extra movements, his breathing became extremely cautious. Oh. The dead silence continued to spread between the two of them. Wei Tian scratched his head and did not dare to take the initiative to start a topic. At this moment Chongjun, who was sitting across the table, slowly raised his head and looked at him. I have a question. Say it. Wei Tian sat upright in an instant. What method did you use to chase your girlfriend? Bai Long and Wei Tian were on the plane at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and by the time they had eaten together, they were ready to catch their flight back. Ruan Jiu Jiu arrived at the restaurant early with Chongjun at the time Bai Long said. Fortunately, there was a private room, and it was easier for them to talk. She was wearing a loose knit sweater with a skirt and lambskin boots, and a silk scarf was tied around her neck, which makes her swan-like neck more slender and graceful. As a woman, Bai Long immediately caught the scarf at her neck. You chose a very good silk scarf today. Ruan Jiu Jiu smiled knowingly and said, Is your lipstick tomato-colored? Ah, you noticed it too. Ah, my man thought I was wearing Aunt's red one. Ruan Jiu Jiu smiled. In contrast, Wei Tian was much more anxious. That day in the hot spring pool was not bad environment, Chongjun explained to Ruan Jiu Jiu. When Chongjun opened the curtain and walked in, Wei Tian was squinting and enjoying. The first time he saw Chongjun, he was stunned for a moment and was inexplicably nervous with those slender eyes staring at him. Soon after, the man turned back and went into the bathroom. Wei Tian soaked in the hot spring until night, but the other party never came in again. Who could have expected that the other party turned out to be the big boss of Jiaqing? Or List? As a straight man, Wei Tian had only one thought in his mind. Mom, I actually saw List's half-naked body. Ruan Jiu Jiu wondered as she noticed that Wei Tian was blushing, and she kindly said, If you think the temperature of the air conditioner is too high, you can turn it down a little bit. No need. In contrast, Bai Long, although very excited, had an IQ. She barely managed to maintain her calmness, but she politely asked Ruan Jiu Jiu to choose the dishes, with the expression of, I am very happy to eat grass at this moment on her face, which made Ruan Jiu Jiu feel awkward. Wei Tian was even more exaggerated. He peeked at Chongjun from time to time like a shy little girl. His eyes flickered, and the temperature on his face never went down. Sometimes when Chongjun was impatiently stared at, he would glance at Wei Tian. Wei Tian was just as excited as someone who was called out by their idol, until they started to fantasize in their heads. Even Bai Long couldn't stand it anymore, kicked her boyfriend secretly and whispered, Are you not ashamed? Be serious. Okay. When the two of them faced Chongjun, they were careful and cautious, for fear that they would say the wrong thing, or wear a wrong expression that would make the boss unhappy. Who would have expected that Chongjun would be very easygoing and approachable the entire time? Although he only nodded at the two symbolically at the beginning and sat on his seat in an impenetrable manner, which made the pressure that the two of them felt multiply, and before they would say something, they would think about whether their words are appropriate. But soon, the two found out that Chongjun did not show any unhappiness, or one could say that his focus was not on the two of them at all. Seems that they had been completely ignored. Gradually they sat down and became more comfortable. The two realized that the boss did not pay attention to their words, so they relaxed and were no longer as cautious as they were at the beginning. The meal was extremely peaceful, and the topic mainly revolved around Bai Long and Ruan Jiu Jiu. Chongjun remained silent and did not say a word from beginning to end, while Wei Tian was afraid that he would tremble as soon as he spoke, so he simply stuffed food into his mouth, restraining himself from wanting to rush up to hug his idol. We'll stay engaged until after the new year. The wedding is scheduled at the end of March. Just the right time to get married, and you go on a honeymoon. Where are you going on your honeymoon? Haven't thought about it yet. I said to go to South America, but he thinks that it's too chaotic. Security issues really need attention. Ruan Jiu Jiu said with a smile. Bai Long said, It's okay, we can spend our honeymoon anywhere. Anyway, I have already played to the places where I want to play. The important thing is the mood when two people are together. The important thing is the mood when two people are together? Ruan Jiu Jiu glanced at Chongjun subconsciously but was caught straight by the other person. She raised her glass and took a sip of juice because of embarrassment. Bai Long noticed the small movements of the two people, almost overwhelming her teenage heart. She held her face and said enviously, "That's nice. I hope that after a few years of our marriage, Wei Tian and I will have such a good relationship." Cough cough. Ruan Jiu Jiu almost choked while drinking juice. "Which I did." Bai Long see that the two of us had a good relationship. "This dog man pinched me yesterday." Halfway through the meal, Ruan Jiu Jiu couldn't eat anymore. She casually ate her salad and continued to chat with Bai Long. Bai Long's topic began to involve the question of how children should be raised in the future. Ruan Jiu Jiu didn't think so much about it. Seeing Bai Long's longing look, she touched her nose and suddenly felt that this was a real marriage. Actively and calmly, holding hands with the lover, and stepped into the marriage hall together. They gained more parents and yet they were very happy. Cheng Jun's slow voice sounded. "Can't eat anymore?" Ruan Jiu Jiu froze for a moment. "Huh." Then she realized that Cheng Jun was staring at her unfinished steak and said, "Yes, I can't eat it anymore." Cheng Jun calmly took Ruan Jiu Jiu's steak, and while Bai Long and Wei Tian were staring dumbfoundedly, he cut the steak into small pieces and continued to eat slowly. Bai Long, what the fuck? That's so sweet. Wei Tian. Big brother is big brother. And he eats elegantly. The two people's violent imaginations were successfully exposed on their faces. Only Ruan Jiu Jiu asked blankly, "What's wrong?" Cheng Jun normally took care of the leftovers at home, including some food that Ruan Jiu Jiu couldn't finish and didn't mind her saliva. Ruan Jiu Jiu had long been accustomed to the way they get along. Unexpectedly, in the eyes of other people, it had become a proper show of affection. The big guy would actually eat his wife's leftovers in front of others. The boss must have done these many times to be so calm. The big guy is so handsome even in eating. So handsome that it's killing me. I am simply stuffed full of this dog food. Ruan Jiu Jiu. Can you two still hear me? Hello. Bai Long woke up from her dreamlike state. She looked at Cheng Jun, then at Wei Tian next to her, and he was caught off guard when she slapped him. "You disliked my saliva last time." I was wrong. Ruan Jiu Jiu was a little amused. How could they ever know that Cheng Jun was just a foodie? Usually at home he would occasionally protect his food. Whenever Ruan Jiu Jiu tried to bully Cheng Jun, he would pretend to inadvertently pick up his food. Then she would witness Mr. Cheng silently moved his plate to a safe area, so that his hard-won meals would not suffer disaster. It was a meal where the host and the guests enjoyed themselves. Bai Long kicked Wei Tian and asked him to pay the bill but was stopped by Ruan Jiu Jiu. No, just consider it as our treat." "That will be embarrassing," Bai Long said. "The hotel belongs to Cheng Jun." Ruan Jiu Jiu's act of persuasion was very straightforward. Oh. Bai Long had originally planned to persuade Ruan Jiu Jiu, but when she heard Ruan Jiu Jiu said this, she was a bit embarrassed in an instant. She retracted her hand in embarrassment and sat on her seat. Bai Long was shocked by Boss Cheng's domineering aura and almost burst into tears. "I'm so envious. She also wants to sleep in her hotel someday." Wei Tian beside her comforted and took Bai Long's arm and said, "You will have it in the future. Wait for me to earn it for you." Bai Long snorted, "I can do it myself." Ruan Jiu Jiu looked at the interaction between the two people suddenly became a little envious. A 10,000-year single dog like her, for a few seconds also wanted to talk about sweet love. Ruan Jiu Jiu's eyes fell on Cheng Jun. Cheng Jun ate the fruit in the platter indifferently, and even took advantage of Ruan Jiu Jiu's carelessness and stole a piece of mango from Ruan Jiu Jiu. Ruan Jiu Jiu. Can she really count on Cheng Jun? It would be easier to expect that when a meteorite hits the earth all mankind will be destroyed. Bai Long picked up her bag and asked with a smile, "Jiu Jiu, do you want to go to the bathroom?" "Oh, okay." The two little sisters went to the bathroom to reapply their makeup while harmoniously holding hands. Ruan Jiu Jiu followed Bai Long through the corridor, standing side by side in front of the bathroom mirror. Ruan Jiu Jiu pulled out a lipstick from her bag and applied it carefully. Beside her, Bai Long holding a lipstick wink said, "Last night was pretty good. Silk scarves were tied ah." This was exactly the way that Ruan Jiu Jiu thought of temporarily. It was better to show that she covered her neck. Bai Long would think about it and would think that they did something last night. Ruan Jiu Jiu gave a calm hum. "It's not bad. My ass." She was pinched but she didn't get anything. Thinking back to the scene of them pinching each other last night, Ruan Jiu Jiu became even more depressed. She and Chung Jun didn't look like a couple. Who would pinch her unexpectedly like Chung Jun? People who don't know would think it was domestic violence. Bai Long sighed enviously. So good-looking, so rich, super cool and playing games, also spoiling his wife, good personality and modest, how could there be such a perfect man in the world? Ruan Jiu Jiu was shocked. Excuse me, are we talking about the same person? You just spend too much time together face to face every day that you find these points common. Bai Long put on the lipstick and put it back into her bag. Then she smiled and looked at Ruan Jiu Jiu. Wei Tian and I could see that Mr. Chang had been paying attention to your every move the whole time. Ruan Jiu Jiu, huh? How is that possible? In her impression, Chung Jun was busy eating the food on his plate. How could he have the time to pay attention to her affairs? Of course. Bai Long folded her hands together and hugged her chest, looking like a little woman. That look tiske. I really don't even have the heart to be jealous. But think about it, with such big beauty at home, a man will surely be moved. Ruan Jiu Jiu. Chung Jun, that guy, cannot simply be classified as a man. The two women in the bathroom were chatting back and forth, while there was an awkward atmosphere between the two men in the private room. The silence for a few minutes after Ruan Jiu Jiu and Bai Long left made time a little bit difficult. Wei Tian pulled his hand and scratched his head. In the past he didn't like to chat nor crack a game by himself, and would simply play on his phone and was too lazy to pay attention to others, but at the moment sitting in front of him was Chung Jun. Not to mention extra movements, his breathing became extremely cautious. Oh. The dead silence continued to spread between the two of them. Wei Tian scratched his head and did not dare to take the initiative to start a topic. At this moment, Chung Jun, who was sitting across the table, slowly raised his head and looked at him. I have a question. Say it. Wei Tian sat upright in an instant. What method did you use to chase your girlfriend? Wei Tian. When Ruan Jiu Jiu and Bai Long returned to the private room, the two men looked different. Chung Jun looked much calmer and continued to eat the fruits in the platter slowly, while Wei Tian's eyes flickered. Sometimes he would take a complicated glance at Ruan Jiu Jiu, and sometimes take a look at Chung Jun as if not daring to say more. Ruan Jiu Jiu asked curiously, Did you guys talk about anything just now? No, we just talked about mountains and rivers. Ruan Jiu Jiu? Wei Tian quickly stood up, grabbed Bai Long's wrist and said, Let's go, we have to catch a flight. You still haven't finished packing your things. Bai Long was dragged to involuntarily follow Wei Tian's body forward, while not forgetting to wave at Ruan Jiu Jiu. Then we're leaving, sorry for the rush time. It's okay. Remember to send me a message when the plane landed. Ruan Jiu Jiu smiled and watched the two leave. And then, Ruan Jiu Jiu lowered her voice and asked Chung Jun, You guys really didn't talk about some weird topics? Chung Jun. It's about mountains and rivers. Ruan Jiu Jiu? Are these two men under a spell? At the same time, Wei Tian, who was dragging Bai Long out, was uneasy. Bai Long finally couldn't hold it back and asked, What exactly did the two of you talk about? My curiosity is killing me. Wei Tian scratched his head and said, Hey, don't mention it. At first, I thought the boss was going to cheat, but after a long time, he just wanted to give Ruan Jiu Jiu a little surprise. And so, he asked me how I chased you back then, and I said how I've chased you. Bai Long's face flushed red. Shameless. How Wei Tian chased her in the first place can be described as shocking and astonishing. They were both still in college at that time. One night, Wei Tian drove her to a small hillside. The two of them sat on the hill. She did not eat anything on the way and complained that she was hungry, so Wei Tian got out of the car and took out a small cake. She didn't get to eat a few bites of the cake when something was caught on her teeth. She spits it into the palm of her hand and found that it was actually a ring. At that moment, Wei Tian knelt on one knee, picked up the ring, and gently asked if he could rehearse and propose marriage. Just then, beautiful fireworks exploded in the sky. Looking at the fireworks in the sky, Bai Long covered her lips in surprise, and tears filled her eyes with excitement. Later, the two of them continued to talk a lot. The story was interrupted by Chung Jun when he reached this paragraph, which also made Wei Tian wake up from his beautiful reverie. Anyway, that's it. Wow, after so many years of marriage he still wants to surprise his wife. It's making me cry. You remember this and be good to me in 5 years. Okay. Absolutely no problem. Wei Tian kissed her lightly on the forehead and hugged Bai Long in his arms. He said, as if in distress, "Then let me quickly fulfill my responsibility as a husband, please." Annoying. Bai Long blushed and snapped. On the other side, the real couple have their own ideas, different beds and different dreams. Ruan Jiu Jiu changed into her pajamas, sat on the sofa with her legs crossed, and played with her mobile phone. There were still 2.5 days before they go home. She didn't know what other arrangements will be made for the next activities. Talking about activities, Ruan Jiu Jiu still likes to ski. This year's New Year is really interesting. Ruan Jiu Jiu stretched her waist. It's my first time going out to play. So what about before this? Chungjun asked. Before this? Ruan Jiu Jiu almost blurted out her previous life. She swallowed it back quickly. She gave a dry cough, retracted her 2 slender legs and continued. Before this, I had been alone, and it was pretty desolate. Ruan Jiu Jiu in this world was an orphan. In her world, she was no different from an orphan, and there was nothing wrong with saying that she had been alone. Thinking about this, she was a little sad, such as the overturned seasoning box, the mixed flavors, sweet and sour, bitter and spicy taste. No one would think of her in the world where she disappeared. Of course, it would also be possible that the bosses of Party A have yelled at them for not receiving the blueprints. You won't be anymore. Ruan Jiu Jiu. Huh. You won't be lonely. Chungjun, with one hand in his pocket, reached out his other hand to rub the top of Ruan Jiu Jiu's head, rubbing her hair into a mess. Next year you can make 200 dumplings at home so you won't feel lonely. Ruan Jiu Jiu, who was moved for a few seconds, was forced to hold back. You? Be a man. Chungjun pondered for a moment. 150 is fine. Ruan Jiu Jiu looked at him with a death glare. Chungjun was beaten back to his room to sleep. Ruan Jiu Jiu was deeply convinced that whenever she faces Chungjun, she would really look like a class teacher who had entered the menopause stage and was on the verge of being angered to death every day. She went back to her bedroom depressed and laid on the soft big bed. There was no mirror on the top of the king-sized bed this time, so she can sleep peacefully. She gradually became sleepy and went to sleep under the blanket. In a trance, she seemed to dream of a warm embrace, and slightly heavy breathing sounded next to her ears. Ruan Jiu Jiu raised her head in a daze, only to see Chungjun's face. He appeared gentler and warmer than his usual appearance, adding a few indescribable seductive tastes. A pair of slender eyes were lowered, surging with some kind of unknown emotions, and his thin lips were dyed with a bright color. Seeing that Ruan Jiu Jiu's mouth was dry, he was a little dumbfounded for a while. He leaned down and cupped Ruan Jiu Jiu's cheek. His low voice seemed to contain fine gravel, which made her heart itch. He said, "Didn't you say that?" Ruan Jiu Jiu swallowed her dry throat and asked tremblingly, "What? Didn't you said that you want to eat dumplings stuffed with vegetarian trifle?" Ruan Jiu Jiu said, "Huh." She woke up suddenly. Her whole body was so hot and sweaty, leaving Ruan Jiu Jiu a little breathless. She later realized that she was asleep under the quilt. No wonder her brain lacked oxygen. No wonder. Ruan Jiu Jiu's face instantly blushed. Did I have an attempted spring dream? And the object of my dream is Chungjun. However, whose spring dream would end like this? Ruan Jiu Jiu's mind was full of only dumplings, dumplings, and dumplings. Do you want dumplings for breakfast or wonton? Outside the bedroom door came Chungjun, slow muttering to himself. Are you not up yet? Even the sled dogs have already been working for a long time. Ruan Jiu Jiu? I'm not a dog. Chungjun. I know. Ruan Jiu Jiu said. What do you mean you know? So you didn't know before. She heard the dogman Chungjun sigh in the living room very clearly and vividly, as if expressing Ruan Jiu Jiu's nonsense. Today was also the day to wonder whether Chungjun will be able to remove his asexuality. The two had lunch and Chungjun proposed to go out to play in the evening. Ruan Jiu Jiu was taken aback and asked, "Isn't it dangerous to go up the mountain at this time? What if there is a landslide on the top of the mountain and the avalanche buried us? Then the two of us got trapped on the snowy mountain. With no food sources, then you're going to raise me as food to eat. Until a climbing team came up to rescue you. You will lie that I was buried in the snow and so on." Chungjun glanced at Ruan Jiu Jiu and blocked her imaginative brain. We're just going to a flat area nearby. The ski resort had more artificial snow. Also, I don't eat human flesh. Oh, wear something thicker, we will leave in the afternoon. What about the lunch? There is a restaurant nearby, we can go out to eat. So, Ruan Jiu Jiu wiped her mouth. So what are we going out for? Chungjun's eyes drifted. Look at mountains and rivers and such. Ruan Jiu Jiu. He said to look at the mountains and rivers, then they'll look at the mountains and rivers anyway, staying in the hotel is boring. Ruan Jiu Jiu followed Chungjun to set off. She didn't know when he asked someone to park a car downstairs. Ruan Jiu Jiu sat in the passenger seat, fastened her seatbelt, and let Chungjun drove slowly to another place. There was not much to eat at noon, and Ruan Jiu Jiu was a little hungry by mid-afternoon. She was looking forward to the restaurant, Chungjun said, and was ready to have a big meal. The snowy road was slippery, and Chungjun didn't drive fast. It took a long time for the two of them to reach a flatland. The place was empty and unoccupied, surrounded by dry woods covered with snow. Looking into the distance, the blue mountains were covered with white snow, which makes people feel more relaxed. The sky was quickly getting dark, and Chungjun's car had been parked on the flat ground for a while. He said that there was a problem with the car and needed to be repaired. Ruan Jiu Jiu sat in the car and waited for a while. Ruan Jiu Jiu was playing a small game at first, but after seeing that the sky was getting darker and her phone's battery was less than half, she got out of the car and asked Chungjun, "Is it done? Call a tow truck if you can't fix it." "It's fixed." Chungjun stood behind the car. "Thanks for your hard work. Then let's continue walking." Chungjun asked her suddenly, "Are you hungry?" Ruan Jiu Jiu blinked her eyes. She had already been a little hungry while waiting, but she was not that hungry. She answered honestly, "It's okay." Chungjun, "So you're a little hungry?" "Perhaps a little hungry." Ruan Jiu Jiu didn't know why Chungjun suddenly started to care about whether she was hungry. "So, how about we go to the restaurant quickly and come out to play after dinner?" Chungjun suddenly picked up a small cake from the trunk. It was a cream cake, tightly covered in a small plastic box. He stuffed it into Ruan Jiu Jiu's hand. "You can eat when you are hungry." Ruan Jiu Jiu was surprised. "Did you prepare small cakes in advance?" "No, it was originally intended to be rationed." "But who would keep rations in the trunk?" Ruan Jiu Jiu silently suppressed the desire to complain. Chungjun was already friendly enough when he gave her a piece of cake, which was a very rare thing to happen. She should have been moved. She opened the plastic box and asked, "Do you want to eat?" "No." His answer was too fast, that Ruan Jiu Jiu couldn't help but wonder if this cake was out of date. She couldn't help but think of the expired piece of chocolate she had eaten, and the culprit was the innocent-looking Chungjun who was in front of her. It couldn't be that the cake had gone bad. Ruan Jiu Jiu looked suspiciously at the cake in her hand. Chungjun shook his head. "Eat at ease." "Okay, thank you." Ruan Jiu Jiu took out a fork and said, "What are we doing here? Will anyone set off fireworks? Although this is not the city, it's not good to set off fireworks, not to mention the air pollution. It will be bad if they accidentally light up a dead tree." Chungjun suddenly interrupted her. "You don't like fireworks?" Ruan Jiu Jiu took a bite of the cake, which was fresh cream, and it tasted very sweet. She vaguely said, "It's okay, I'm not very interested in fireworks or anything." Chungjun. Ruan Jiu Jiu, who was eating cake, was pushed down by Chungjun's back shoulder. He pushed her to get in the car. Ruan Jiu Jiu was stunned and asked, "Why do you want to get in the car all of a sudden?" Although it was a bit cold outside, the scenery was quite beautiful and Ruan Jiu Jiu planned to take a few photos later. Chungjun just pushed her and motioned for her to get in the car. "It's cold outside." Ruan Jiu Jiu was carelessly pushed into the car and right into the back seat. And with a bam, Chungjun closed the door, leaving Ruan Jiu Jiu with a black back. It looks like a call arrived. Maybe something urgent. She retracted her gaze and continued to eat sweet cakes. Perhaps it was the first taste of sweetness Ruan Jiu Jiu ate quickly, that she almost finished the whole cake in a few bites. After Chungjun finished the call and quickly explained that they should not set off the fireworks, he opened the car door and saw Ruan Jiu Jiu wiping her lips gracefully. The only thing left of the cake was an empty plate. He stood stiffly outside the car, holding the door with one hand, the snow crunching under his feet. It was very cold, but for a while it was hard to tell who was colder. Realizing that Chungjun's expression was not right, Ruan Jiu Jiu asked. What's wrong? Chung Jun was strangely silent. If he remembered correctly, according to his request, the ring was stuffed in the middle of the cake, which could be seen by scooping a few spoonsful of cream. A suffocating silence was brewing between the two, and the source of this silence was Chung Jun, which made Ruan Jiu Jiu at loss. Chung Jun. Ruan Jiu Jiu. What the hell happened? Why do I feel that your expression is not quite right? Chung Jun was silent for a long time, which almost made Ruan Jiu Jiu impatient when he slowly asked, Didn't you feel that something was wrong when eating the cake? Ruan Jiu Jiu was immediately lost when he asked that. What do you mean? Did you really give me a spoiled cake? It's not the cake. Could it be the plastic box? I put a diamond ring. Ruan Jiu Jiu. Question mark. It's inside the cake. Oh? Ruan Jiu Jiu was a bit stunned at first, then her mind went blank. You mean I ate a ring? Wait, how much money was the ring? Surprisingly, the first thing that came to her mind was the price of the ring. Hundreds of thousands. Hundreds of thousands. Ruan Jiu Jiu was shocked, and she waved her hands without thinking. Go go go. Hurry up and drive me to the hospital. Maybe a gastric lavage can take it out while it's still early. Chung Jun. Come on, it's not worth so much money if you cut me down and sell me. Ruan Jiu Jiu thought about the hundreds of thousands that would go down the drain, which made her feel distressed that she almost cried. She urged Chung Jun to get into the driver's seat, and she sat in the back seat clutching her stomach, silently hoping that it's not too late. The car started. Chung Jun drove the car, silent and speechless. It was supposed to be a romantic thing, but now it had become a false alarm. When she thought that it would be hard to wash her stomach later, and she would have to spend more money in the hospital, Ruan Jiu Jiu felt even more distressed. For a while, she didn't know whether she should be distressed by the wasted money or be distressed for herself. The car suddenly became quiet. One of them sat in the driver's seat and the other was in the back seat. Ruan Jiu Jiu looked at the back of his head. Without looking at him, she could already imagine Chung Jun pretending to be calm and composed, and she suddenly puffed out a laugh. I'm really convinced. How did you come up with such an old-fashioned idea? Chung Jun's tone wavered. His hand was holding the steering wheel for a while, and then he said, Study. Ruan Jiu Jiu didn't know whether to laugh or cry. What kind of idea did you learn? After the shock, the mood became calm, and Ruan Jiu Jiu was ready to go to the hospital for gastric lavage. At this time she recalled what Chung Jun did just now. She suddenly had a flash of realization and asked, Did you just try to show me a surprise? Was it fireworks? Chung Jun. No. I actually guessed it right. The fireworks and the diamond ring really made him look like an overbearing president. It's a pity that the plan couldn't keep up with the changes. It doesn't matter what she wants because she still had to go to the hospital. Ruan Jiu Jiu probably did not expect to see such a scene. Touching the diamond ring in her belly, Ruan Jiu Jiu was speechless but thought it was funny. She looked over her left and looked at the icy sky and snowy scenery outside the window. Then she suddenly spoke softly. Actually, there's no need for the ring, the fireworks and all of that. I don't love money as much as you think. Although on the surface she always yelled that this one was expensive and that one was valuable, when in fact her desire for money was not a lot. If she had enough money to spend, it's enough for her, because if she really wore a diamond ring she would have to worry about breaking it or losing it. I wasn't thinking that way. Ruan Jiu Jiu was stunned for a moment. Huh? Chung Jun said while driving. If the money can keep you by my side, maybe I won't be so worried that I can't sleep. She was momentarily surprised and stared at Chung Jun in a daze. Nor would I stay in the living room in the middle of the night for fear that you will slip away. When I go to work, I always worry about being alone again when I come back. Oh, it's easy to do surveillance footage in location, but I never thought it would be used on you. Just half an hour ago, even in the most challenging game of my competitive career, I had never had such an uneasy and uncontrolled emotion. He held the steering wheel with one hand and was quiet for a moment. If only liking someone could be as easy as programming. Maybe I'll be able to find bugs, crack your firewall, and make up viruses that could shake you. A scorching temperature gradually flared up Ruan Jiu Jiu's cheeks, and it was so hot that it almost melted her heart into a puddle of water. She didn't expect that a straight man like Chung Jun would be so moving when he talked about love. Silence resumed in the car, and the sound of tires crushing on the snow could be faintly heard, just like the cracking sound of Ruan Jiu Jiu's protective wall, cracking layer after layer. She originally thought that between the two of them, she was at a disadvantage and she was afraid of being hurt, so she didn't dare to like him, and didn't dare to take the initiative to give. She said she wanted to try, but her heart was cowering desperately. Even if he tried testing her repeatedly outside her hard shell, she would still pretend that she didn't know anything and remain indifferent. Ruan Jiu Jiu's gaze fell on her knees, and she clenched her fists, looking a little bit restless. Actually, ding dong. Chung Jun's cell phone rang, and he instantly pressed it off. He squeezed the phone tightly and after a long time he asked, "Actually what?" Actually, she couldn't like him at all. Actually, she already had someone she likes. Actually, you answer your phone first. Ruan Jiu Jiu clenched her fist and coughed dryly, avoiding the topic. She's like a snail hiding in her shell, sneaking out her tentacles, making a slight change, and then immediately shrunk back, so he doesn't even know how to make her come out. Where Ruan Jiu Jiu couldn't see, Chung Jun's expression became a little sadder. Nevertheless, the expression on his face and his tone were as calm and slow as ever. He dialed the number back and made a call. Hello. The call was from the hotel manager, and his tone was a little panicked. Boss, you took the wrong cake and there is no ring in it. This kind of neglect of duty is simply unforgivable. I have already let the chef in charge pack up and leave. The ring is there? Chung Jun interrupted him. The hotel manager was stunned for a second, and then he replied, Yes, it's in the hotel. Don't worry, I will keep it safe and will never lose it. Probably the most beautiful idiom in the world is a false alarm. Chung Jun's slow voice was so calm that there were no ups and downs, making the hotel manager feel uneasy. Boss, you can punish me if you want to. I'm also responsible for failing to supervise in time. You don't have to go. Huh. Call the cook back too. Double your salary this month. The hotel manager was dumbfounded. Boss. The response he received was the beep of the boss hanging up. It was very quiet in the car, and Ruan Jiu Jiu could hear it clearly when she sat in the back seat. Her mood was a bit complicated. She just clutched her belly as if she was carrying a treasure. Now her belly is worthless, probably would worth a few caddies of meat. However, not having to go to the hospital for a gastric lavage was simply the best thing for Ruan Jiu Jiu. The two sat in the car, and there was an awkward silence. The beautiful atmosphere had been completely destroyed, and it would be even worse if they continued to tell their feelings at such time. Ruan Jiu Jiu gave a cough dryly, looked out the window and said, Let's go back, I'm hungry. Do you want to go to that restaurant? No. She was really scared, afraid that Chung Jun would make some strange surprise again. Ruan Jiu Jiu still remembered the lesson of the last time where she almost went to another city by plane during the new year. She pursed her lips and said, Next time you're going to do this, you'd better notify me in advance. I don't want to waste energy anymore. If there is next time. Chung Jun hummed lightly, not knowing how he felt at the moment. The vehicle started slowly. They were able to chat on the way here, but when they came back they became two mute people and no one spoke. Ruan Jiu Jiu's elbow was leaning against the window of the car. The sky outside was pitch black, dotted with a few twinkling stars. Even though the brilliance of serenity was few and far between, they were trying hard to reflect their own brilliance. Unconsciously, there was a smile on her lips. Back at the hotel, the two of them silently agreed not to mention what happened in the car. There were not many people in the hotel's buffet. The two of them finished a meal in silence, and Ruan Jiu Jiu can clearly feel Chung Jun's sudden declining appetite. He actually ate only one meal. It was unbelievable, like a red rain coming from the sky. The two of them walked through the corridor in silence and entered the guest room. It was indeed early to go to bed at this point. There were still a few hours to reach zero to say this year had really passed. Perhaps watching the Spring Festival Gala was not a good choice. You speak first. You speak first. Ruan Jiu Jiu laughed. Since when did we have such a tacit understanding? Chung Jun looked away, did not answer the conversation but said slowly, It's late, go to sleep. At this moment, Ruan Jiu Jiu took a few steps forward and walked in front of Chung Jun. She was a head shorter than Chung Jun, which made her look more petite and lovely. Chung Jun didn't say a word and asked Ruan Jiu Jiu what she was going to do with his eyes. Ruan Jiu Jiu's eyes were calm, but the tips of her ears were red. She opened her arms and said awkwardly, "You are allowed to hold for 10 seconds. Don't refuse." She was interrupted before she could finish her words. The next second, Ruan Jiu Jiu fell into a familiar but strange embrace. The slender and powerful arms hugged her tightly. As if afraid that she would run away, Ruan Jiu Jiu struggled uncomfortably but was hugged even tighter. Her nose was filled with Chung Jun's good-smelling breath, extinguishing the coldness of the snow, yet gradually melting and enveloping the hot skin. Ruan Jiu Jiu's cheeks were also smeared with a faint pink color, which made her look incredibly attractive and unbelievably cute. Let's test it first. Maybe there is still hope. Perhaps she shouldn't refuse too quickly, because no one knows what it will be like in the future. Chung Jun's muffled answer came over her head, with a raspy aftertone. Okay. There was still a day before they go home. Ruan Jiu Jiu, however, always feels a little awkward. When she thought of the 10 long seconds last night, Ruan Jiu Jiu suddenly didn't dare to go out and face Chung Jun, for fear that Chung Jun would hold her again. She was restless, watching the clock on the wall ticking, and when noon came, there was a knock on her door. Chung Jun's lazy voice came through the door. "Do you want to eat?" "I'll eat." She cleared her throat. "I'll change my clothes. The cook made dumplings, and they will be delivered later." Got it, got it." Chung Jun said nothing. She guessed that he should have already gone far. Ruan Jiu Jiu stood up on tiptoe, leaned on the bedside table, and quietly picked up her clothes like a thief, even though she didn't know why she had to be so careful. She stood up straight and moved slowly to lift her pants. At this moment, Chung Jun's slow voice rang out suddenly. "You shouldn't be nervous." Plop! Ruan Jiu Jiu didn't stand still and fell to the ground. "Shut up." She glared. Chung Jun. Well, she was just a little nervous. Ruan Jiu Jiu had been single for many years and had never been in love. She had always been so strong and afraid of showing any weakness in front of Chung Jun. She slept all night thinking about the attitude she should show when facing Chung Jun. It didn't take long for Ruan Jiu Jiu to think things through. Her heart was moved for a few seconds, and it was Chung Jun who hugged her tightly. She does not need to feel guilty. After Ruan Jiu Jiu washed up and walked out of the door, Chung Jun was already waiting in the dining room. He lifted the cover of the 2 plates of dumplings, sat on a chair and said, "Eat some dumplings." "Oh, okay." As soon as the meal arrived, the two of them forgot about other things and ate dumplings in a very harmonious way. Ruan Jiu Jiu dipped a dumpling into a little vinegar, and a large dumpling was stuffed into her mouth. The dumplings were thin and stuffed with a lot of filling. It was also soaked with a little vinegar, which made it taste excellent. Ruan Jiu Jiu enjoyed eating. Chung Jun, who was sitting across the table, ate much slower than usual. Ruan Jiu Jiu glanced at him and subconsciously asked, "What's wrong, is it not good?" Chung Jun gave a "hmm." "It's not as good as the dumplings you make." When she was suddenly praised, Ruan Jiu Jiu couldn't help but feel a little excited when she was compared to the chef who was hired with a high salary. Immediately afterward, Chung Jun said seriously, "I want to eat your dumplings when I go back." Okay, okay. 100. Ruan Jiu Jiu. You should go eat air. 80 is also fine. Chung Jun actually started to bargain. Say it again and I'll make you eat noodles for a week. Chung Jun continued to bargain. Army stew for side dishes? Ruan Jiu Jiu. He's a hopeless case. After eating dumplings, the two went for a walk outside. Recalling the fear of being hit by a snowball, Ruan Jiu Jiu restrained her thoughts of playing snowball. Who knows if this dogman's competitive spirit gets ignited and puts the competition first and love second. There were no people on the vast snow. Almost everyone went to the outdoor hot springs or went to the ski slopes to play. There was only unmelted snow on the large open area from the hotel, crunching on the ground. Chung Jun's gaze fell on Ruan Jiu Jiu's feet. The two were equipped with complete cold protection equipment, including hats, scarves, gloves, and down jackets. Ruan Jiu Jiu was afraid of freezing her feet. She wore a pair of cashmere snow boots, which was said to be made of Australian wool, which was very warm. However, she was dressed tightly at the moment, so she could no longer feel the cold. Ruan Jiu Jiu realized that Chung Jun was staring at her feet and asked, "What's the matter? Your shoes. Are they good looking?" This pair of boots was quite expensive. Ruan Jiu Jiu braggingly raised her foot to show Chongjun like a pig's foot. Ruan Jiu Jiu? Question mark. It looks more like it when you lift it up. Ruan Jiu Jiu? Chongjun was beaten through the gloves before he quieted down. He stood by weakly, while Ruan Jiu Jiu clapped her hands happily and said, "Let's build a snowman." It was rare for Ruan Jiu Jiu to have an idea of making a snowman. In her impression, a snowman had a round-headed look in the cartoon. If you insert a branch and a few stones, it will be basically done. Ruan Jiu Jiu happily piled the base and rolled out a piece of flat ground. She didn't hear Chongjun's voice for a while, and thought that he was lazy and unwilling to move. When she heard the roar of a car engine, Ruan Jiu Jiu raised her head in surprise. An off-road car was parked nearby, and someone got off the car respectfully, handed a bucket of tools to Chongjun, and respectfully watched Chongjun walk over to her. Ruan Jiu Jiu was stunned. "Why did you take so many things and even a shovel? Are we going to build a house?" Chongjun replied slowly, "Aren't we going to build a snowman?" She wanted to build a snowman, not an ice sculpture. To Ruan Jiu Jiu's surprise, Chongjun's hands-on ability was very strong. Usually she knows how to imagine in her mind, but in actual action, Ruan Jiu Jiu was completely clueless. Chongjun even took a little foldable chair and let her sit aside. She watched Chongjun pile up snow and form it into a porcelain shape, and finally made a rough outline of more than 1 meter. Gradually the general image became clear. The more Ruan Jiu Jiu looked at it, the more familiar it became, and suddenly it dawned on her. Isn't this the image of the heroine I designed? This really surprised her. She did not expect Chongjun to remember it well. Chongjun's hands were red from the cold, but he remained indifferent throughout the whole process, and just built a snowman intently. Ruan Jiu Jiu held her chin and looked at Chongjun's face and realized for the first time in a long time that he was pretty kind of good-looking. "It's your turn." "Huh." Chongjun handed the tool to Ruan Jiu Jiu. "Draw." Ruan Jiu Jiu was still very experienced in 3D modeling. At first she moved slowly and estimated the approximate size up and down. Gradually, the movements of Ruan Jiu Jiu's hands were getting faster and faster. Only the sound of the rustling pieces of snow falling on the ground was heard, and the specific details of the character gradually took shape. Chongjun stood next to her and brought tools to Ruan Jiu Jiu. Her serious appearance was different from her usual one. She looked like a sharp and quiet beauty. The frost on her eyelids melted quickly. Because of her non-stop action, sweat oozes from her forehead and her cheeks became red. There! Ruan Jiu Jiu finally stood up straight. Her waist was sore and stiff, but she felt very accomplished. The image of the heroine in front of her was completely presented. She was crossing her arms, tilting her head, one corner of her lips still holding the all-time favorite blade of grass, the other corner of her lips raised, which made her smile look more animated. Ruan Jiu Jiu wiped the sweat bead on her head, looked at the masterpiece for a moment with great satisfaction, and took out a few pictures with her mobile phone. If she didn't take a picture of the snowman, it will melt. After working hard for half an afternoon today, it was estimated that there will be only a lump of snow left by tomorrow. It's a pity her lifespan is too short. Chongjun glanced at the photos on Ruan Jiu Jiu's phone, took the phone out of his pocket and said slowly, "Send me a copy of those photos." "Okay." When sending the photos, Ruan Jiu Jiu did not forget to criticize Chongjun. "Look at how good I can shoot the snowman, and then look at you." In her line of sight, Chongjun's wallpaper was the photo taken in the snow that day. Ruan Jiu Jiu laughed stupidly. Chongjun, who was used as a humanoid pillow next to her, was tightly covered and couldn't see anything. "Ah, you still have it, it's ugly. I'm just messing around, delete it." Chongjun raised his phone very high like a treasure protector. "No." Ruan Jiu Jiu gave up, struggling. "Okay, it's up to you. It's better than the picture of her falling into a pile of snow." Chongjun received Ruan Jiu Jiu's photos and quickly sent them to Tu Nan. "Chongjun, the souvenirs for the new tour are available. Just follow this one." Tu Nan, who is being interrogated by his 7 aunts and aunts at home? So simple. Tu Nan, oh. Tu Nan, boss, I saw sister-in-law's circle of friends. Did you have fun skiing? Did you have a good time with sister-in-law? Tu Nan, I miss you guys so much. Wait for me after New Year. I'll come back to play with you. Tu Nan, boss, why don't you reply to me? After the last message was sent, A sentence suddenly appeared on the screen. The other party had started friend verification, and you are not her friend. Please send friend verification first. Tunan cried. The boss removed him again. Look at this child, he's so depressed after being single for too long, poor thing. Tunan cried even harder when he heard the words of his relatives. Having fun playing with the snowman can be regarded as a satisfying end to their trip. When the two got on the plane, Ruan Jiu Jiu buckled up. The flight was still a few hours away. The stewardess pushed the cart to deliver pre-ordered meals. Ruan Jiu Jiu was surprised to find that it was the same airplane meal she thought tasted pretty good the last time she traveled. Noticing Ruan Jiu Jiu's gaze, Chung Jun explained, "You can't treat yourself badly when you eat." Ruan Jiu Jiu. That makes sense. She lifted the lid and there were 2 extra slices of eel on the rice, which was more sumptuous than last time. Ruan Jiu Jiu ate with relish. She ate all the fruits and desserts. Hearing Chung Jun said that he had prepared several portions, she cheekily asked for one more. Chung Jun, who was sitting next to her, didn't like to eat airplane meals the most. When he saw Ruan Jiu Jiu eating happily, he felt like he was chewing wax, and suddenly he also tasted a little bit. Chung Jun asked, "Is it delicious?" Ruan Jiu Jiu said, "Of course it's delicious. Hey, don't steal my eel." Chung Jun chewed a bite. It was really weirdly delicious. Halfway through the flight, the cold clouds finally revealed a clear and blue color, gradually becoming orange-red colored, which looked magnificent. Ruan Jiu Jiu originally said she wanted to watch the sunset, but she fell asleep while waiting. Her eyes were tightly closed, her thin eyelashes were thick, her red lips were pursed, and she sleeps well. Her hand rested on the armrest, motionless. Chung Jun's gaze flickered for a while, and then he moved slowly, like a thief who was stealing something while the boss was not paying attention, silently put his hand on the back of Ruan Jiu Jiu's hand and hold it tightly. Ruan Jiu Jiu was probably asleep and there was no reaction at all. If someone could hear Ruan Jiu Jiu's heartbeat at this time, they would definitely hear her calm analysis. Do I wake up or pretend to be asleep? Think again. Chung Jun had really fulfilled his promise. The dumplings were not made by Ruan Jiu Jiu alone. Half were Ruan Jiu Jiu's Yunnan dumplings, and half were Chung Jun's moon-shaped dumplings. He added a lot of stuffing, and the moon-shaped dumplings leaked several times, and they almost turned into soup, which made Ruan Jiu Jiu laugh for a while. After eating 2.5 plates of dumplings, Ruan Jiu Jiu was afraid that Chung Jun's stomach would burst, and quickly stopped his unrestrained behavior. Chung Jun only became unrestrained in eating. For other things, he always looked tired and disinterested. Even when his work was done, he would never waste time. For the first time, Ruan Jiu Jiu felt that the atmosphere of only 2 people celebrating the New Year was pretty good. She had already decided to go to another city for the holidays next year. It would be better to go to the beach, run around with bare feet, and feel the sun that should have been cold in winter. Sitting on the sofa, Chung Jun suddenly asked, "Going to work?" "Of course I'm going." The feeling of doing nothing at home was just too unpleasant, but there was still a job that makes her feel at ease. Ruan Jiu Jiu kept peeling the oranges to eat. Chung Jun bought the oranges when he went to the supermarket. They were so sweet and watery that it was so sweet to her heart. "Do you want to eat?" Before Ruan Jiu Jiu's words came to an end, Chung Jun took the orange in her hand and ate it. "Ruan Jiu Jiu. Peel one for yourself." Chung Jun. "Thank you." Ruan Jiu Jiu. "Oh." Probably because of eating too much orange, the next day Ruan Jiu Jiu woke up with a mouth ulcer on the tip of her tongue, which made her cry when she brushed her teeth. Chung Jun thought she was crying. He stood there thinking for a moment and said, "If you don't want to go to work, don't go." In that way, he quite looked like a father coaxing a child who was unwilling to go to school, with a bit of caution. Ruan Jiu Jiu immediately retorted. Once her words came out, they turned into a vague and tearful tone. "It's not like that. Chung Jun." Ruan Jiu Jiu was in too much pain to say anything. Forget it, she'd better shut up. When she returned to the company again, Tu Nan had greeted Ruan Jiu Jiu's return with the roar of gongs, drums, and firecrackers. He was so enthusiastic throughout the whole process that he was beyond words. He surrounded Ruan Jiu Jiu while being so caring that even the assistant looked at him with disgust. Ruan Jiu Jiu's tongue was still hurting, and she was a little bit unwilling to speak. "Ahen, you going to have a meeting? Aren't you going to have a meeting?" Tu Nan's eyes suddenly became very strange. Sister-in-law, what's wrong with you? Ruan Jiu Jiu. Got a sore. Tu Nan's strange eyes showed that he did not believe it at all. It must be the seemingly desolate but was actually a beast boss who bit his sister-in-law's tongue. That's what men are like, they're like animals when it comes to the women they like. If Chung Jun knew that Tu Nan would use this analogy, he would probably send him directly out of Jia Cheng. So it's like that. Just in time, sister-in-law, would you like to drink tea? My friend brought a few good teas. There are 4, let's leave first. Tu Nan's enthusiasm made Ruan Jiu Jiu overwhelmed. She hurriedly fled, leaving Tu Nan standing there, scratching his head in confusion. That's not right, sister-in-law, your office is here, where are you going? The little secretary behind him smiled and said, Go to a quiet place. Tu Nan, isn't our Jia Cheng quiet enough? The secretary continued to smile. Yes. Tu Nan. He did not know why, but in the secretary's beautiful pair of eyes, he vaguely noticed a bit of dislike. Ruan Jiu Jiu used the excuse of going to the restroom to escape. She went around and came back. Lao Meng, who hadn't seen her for a long time, smiled, sat beside Ruan Jiu Jiu's seat, and waited for her to return. As soon as she walked in, Lao Meng said enthusiastically, Jiu Jiu, how was the spring festival? Ruan Jiu Jiu first cautiously observed left and right, and when she found that Tu Nan was not around, she was relieved. Thank God. Lao Meng, what's wrong with you? Today, Ruan Jiu Jiu was very exhausted in explaining about her mouth ulcers for the nth time. After Lao Meng learned about the situation, he thoughtfully let Ruan Jiu Jiu sit in her seat. At this time, Ruan Jiu Jiu saw Lao Meng's black circle, but his eye sockets were white. When he grinned, his big white teeth looked extremely brilliant, making Ruan Jiu Jiu almost laugh out loud. Where did you go to play? Hey, don't mention it. We went on a trip to Hainanu. Your sister-in-law said that she wanted to get healthy wheat-colored skin, and she only told me after a whole day of sun exposure that she puts on sunscreen. Speaking of this, Lao Meng burst into tears. It's too much. I put my hands on my belly, and I woke up with a white belly, and your sister-in-law almost laughed to death. Ruan Jiu Jiu and could imagine the picture. Lao Meng brought Hainan's special products, and the fruit transported by plane was not cheap. Ruan Jiu Jiu was embarrassed to accept it but was stopped by Lao Meng for the reason that he didn't bother to take it back if he didn't want to bring it over with so much effort. There were mangoes and coconuts and a few boxes were stuffed full. Lao Meng patted her shoulder. Wait until your tongue is not sore anymore before eating. It's okay, this thing can wait. Ruan Jiu Jiu. She doesn't want to suffer from mouth ulcers again. It was so painful to the point of begging for life and death, and she's suffering all the time. One was toothache, the other was tongue pain, coupled with the occasional severe menstruation pain. This was probably the most painful test of life in the world. Because her mouth hurts when she opens it, Ruan Jiu Jiu didn't want to talk, didn't want to drink water nor even eat food, so she just sat motionless in a chair and was only drawing. Drawing makes her happy. About half an hour later, there was a beep from the phone. It was Chung Jun's message. Chung Jun, come to my office. Ruan Jiu Jiu, what? Chung Jun, eat Ruan Jiu Jiu? She entered Chung Jun's office while being confused, thinking that Chung Jun hadn't eaten enough. When she woke up this morning, her tongue hurt so bad. Ruan Jiu Jiu was upset and didn't prepare a meal, so she went to the company empty-handed. It was expected that Chung Jun certainly did not like the company's food, although Jia Cheng's food was already well known, and had been on several hot searches. It was said that the chefs he hired were all from various places. Pushing the door open, Chung Jun was sitting in front of his desk with a few boxes of meals on the table. There was light porridge, soft golden and silver steamed buns, and a small plate of refreshing side dishes. Seeing Ruan Jiu Jiu come in, Chung Jun opened the lunchbox and said, "Eat, it will be cold after a while." Ruan Jiu Jiu was suddenly moved. Chung Jun would even prepare these things for her. It's not easy. He had really grown up. While drinking the porridge, Ruan Jiu Jiu silently said that she must return the favor to Chung Jun by cooking him a big meal. Then Chung Jun said slowly, "I had a big lunch at noon." Ruan Jiu Jiu. "Ah, it's for free. Pack it back if you don't want to eat it." Ruan Jiu Jiu swallowed a mouthful of porridge and did not spit it out. Chung Jun immediately regained his desire to live. Just kidding. If you keep being naughty, I'll really kill you. If you keep being naughty, I'll really kill you. But the side dishes are really gifts. Ruan Jiu Jiu. Chungjun, huh? It's still a joke. Ruan Jiu Jiu silently suppressed the urge to send him to heaven by hitting him. Jokes are not funny. This meal really can't be delicious. Fortunately, Chungjun became a man, took out a box of medicines from the drawer when Ruan Jiu Jiu was drinking the porridge, slowly pulled out 2 pills, and took another cup of hot water to set aside. Ruan Jiu Jiu drank half of the porridge, her head in a straight line of sight, which forced her to look up. What's the matter? Chungjun asked seriously. Is it delicious? Why though you want to eat too? Why do you want to eat too? Then excuse me. He surprisingly pulled out another spoon from the drawer. Ruan Jiu Jiu. Ruan Jiu Jiu sternly refused to share a bowl with Chungjun. Their relationship was not that good that they could drink in the same bowl of porridge, so she asked him to behave himself. Chungjun took the spoon back silently and continued to quietly stare at Ruan Jiu Jiu drinking the porridge. After drinking the porridge and taking the medicine, Ruan Jiu Jiu was about to leave when she was stopped by Chungjun. Are you busy at work? He asked. Ruan Jiu Jiu shook her head. Then work here and we can also see the new plan. Okay. Ruan Jiu Jiu subconsciously wanted to refuse, but when she thought that Tunan would visit her office again, she decided to stay here. The fact that Tunan was so clingy was really scary, and even Ruan Jiu Jiu can't handle his talkativeness. And so the two sat facing each other, each doing their own work. There was also a cup of strong tea on the desk, which was said to be good for mouth ulcers. Ruan Jiu Jiu started drinking tea after working for a while. Chungjun sat opposite her at the office, in a state of seriousness that was rare in front of Ruan Jiu Jiu. For fear of disturbing him, Ruan Jiu Jiu even tried to keep the sound of drinking tea as low as possible. Chungjun looked at the computer screen and was silent for a moment. In Ruan Jiu Jiu's bewildering line of sight, he moved his chair, sat next to Ruan Jiu Jiu, and turned his computer around. Ruan Jiu Jiu. What are you doing here? Chungjun calmly used the computer with his right hand, and his left hand directly held Ruan Jiu Jiu's soft hand, holding it tightly. Work. Ruan Jiu Jiu. It seems that this guy asked her to come to the office to work and to take advantage of her? Ruan Jiu Jiu was about to shake it off when Chungjun looked at her and whispered, just for a moment. Those eyes were a little more pitiful. Ruan Jiu Jiu was silent. They agreed to be together and even already hugged. It was really unnecessary to be awkward about holding hands. She held the tea in one hand and sipped it, only feeling that Chungjun's fingers were dry and slender, and there was a thin layer of calluses on his fingertips. He held her hand tightly as if he had finally caught a slippery fish in the river, and was unwilling to let go. Holding on, Ruan Jiu Jiu calmed down, put the tea aside, and continued to look at the computer. Boss? Boss, I'm here. With the sound of knocking on the door, Tunan pushed the door open. Ruan Jiu Jiu was startled and flung his hand away subconsciously as if being caught committing adultery. The two of them were too close, and Ruan Jiu Jiu hit Chungjun with her body. Chungjun, who was working on his work, was unguarded, and he was knocked down with the chair. As soon as Tunan entered the door, he saw his boss being pushed to the ground by his sister-in-law, and bam, how miserable it was. He was stunned for a long time before he stammered and whispered, Domestic violence? Chungjun. Tunan maintained his movements when he pushed the door open. With shoulders shrugged, lowered head and a handsome face, he was surprised by his actions. His gaze wandered in the air. He looked like a righteous passerby who wanted to pretend that he didn't saw anything but saw something and was embarrassed to stop it. Tunan continued to ask in a low voice, the situation is not good? Ruan Jiu Jiu was about to explain. Tunan continued to whisper, how about? Sister-in-law, you go home and then continue. Ruan Jiu Jiu said. God forbid Tunan doesn't get blocked by Chungjun, who was seen by his subordinate in a domestic violence scene, was very calm. He slowly stood up on one hand and picked up the chair that had fallen to the side. Ruan Jiu Jiu asked with slight embarrassment, are you okay? Did you fall? Chungjun did not answer her but sighed quietly. Ruan Jiu Jiu understood what Chungjun was referring to. Realizing the uncertain atmosphere surging between the two, Tunan said sarcastically, I just came in to talk about a less important matter. Since the boss is still busy, I will go out first. The righteous passerby just slipped away, leaving the couple to look at each other. Ruan Jiu Jiu was anxious for a while, and she forgot that her tongue was hurting. I'm sorry, is your body hurt anywhere? Boss Chung promptly sold misery. The whole body hurts. Did you hurt your pelvis? Would you like to go to the hospital? Thinking about it carefully, Chung Jun once had a bone fracture on his hand because of her. Even his shoulder was cut. Ruan Jiu Jiu became even more guilty. She grabbed Chung Jun's arm, and before she could take a step, her wrist was gripped, though only gently. Ruan Jiu Jiu staggered into Chung Jun's arms. He put his arms around her back and brought her into his arms. Chung Jun's warm voice came from above her head. It seems to be much better. He said this, but the strength of his arms did not loosen. Ruan Jiu Jiu's face blushed instantly. This guy was looking for a reason to take advantage of her. When she was being hugged tightly, Tu Nan, who had left the door, turned back. He thought that domestic violence in the office was not very good. If it was seen by others, it will be difficult to handle it. He decided to persuade his sister-in-law to close the door before doing something. Tu Nan knocked on the door and said, "That, Ruan Jiu Jiu." She subconsciously pushed Chung Jun, and suddenly burst out with great strength while she was panicking. With one blow, Chung Jun was pushed away. His back leg hit the chair, and the chair was overturned to the ground with a thud. Fortunately, the person was fine. When Tu Nan came in, he saw the scene where Ruan Jiu Jiu pushed the boss far away with a slap. Tu Nan was taken aback for a moment and then whispered, "It's not over yet? Ruan Jiu Jiu." Chung Jun. When he returned home at night, Tu Nan sent a lot of heat-reducing fruits with a nervous expression, as if he was giving gifts to the leader. He had good intentions. He was afraid that the boss would get beaten again when he went home. It was simply tragic. Ruan Jiu Jiu looked at the trunk full of fruits. Half of it was Lao Meng's specialties, and half of it was Tu Nan's good intentions. She fell into silence. Chung Jun sighed again in a quiet manner. Ruan Jiu Jiu. I'm sorry. Chung Jun silently carried the fruits to the empty corner, silently returned to the study to continue working, silently ate his meal, silently washed the pot, and silently ate the fruit after. He did not say a word to Ruan Jiu Jiu. Ruan Jiu Jiu was a little apologetic at first and didn't know how to make up for it. After eating, Bailongma suddenly went online and asked Ruan Jiu Jiu to go eat chicken too. Ruan Jiu Jiu then forgot about Chung Jun's stubbornness and happily lay down and won. The teammates who played with Bailongma had good skills and took Ruan Jiu Jiu to eat chicken several times. She was very engrossed throughout the whole process and had a great time. Chung Jun was silent beside her, realizing that he was really completely ignored. When Ruan Jiu Jiu finally finished eating chicken and got offline, she turned around and found that Chung Jun hadn't left yet. He was sitting on the sofa, his head leaning on the pillow and tilted to one side. His eyes were closed, not knowing when he fell asleep. Ruan Jiu Jiu was stunned for a moment. It was already a little late to go to bed at this hour. If Chung Jun sleeps on the sofa all night, he will carelessly catch a cold. Ruan Jiu Jiu leaned in and pushed his shoulder gently. Chung Jun? Chung Jun. Chung Jun hummed, rubbing his eyes lazily. Ruan Jiu Jiu said, "Why are you sleeping here? Go back to your room and don't catch a cold." Chung Jun's eyes were sleepy and his voice was a bit hoarse. There are still things left to do. Ruan Jiu Jiu uncertainly asked, "What? Is work not finished yet?" As soon as she finished speaking, she fell into an embrace. Chung Jun was familiar with this body temperature. The fragrance was very weak, but it still smells good. Ruan Jiu Jiu struggled for a while but failed, so she resigned to her fate and was hugged tightly. He hugged her for a long time and didn't let go. Ruan Jiu Jiu was about to tell him to let go when Chung Jun's slow voice came from above her head. "Your back is so meaty." Ruan Jiu Jiu. "Shut up." She knew he couldn't spit out ivory from his dog mouth. 3. After a few days, her mouth ulcers finally healed. Ruan Jiu Jiu was in a good mood, and she smiled at everyone she met. After experiencing the painful lesson of being on the boss's blacklist and being deleted several times, Tu Nan learned to wait for a while before entering. He knocked on the door and waited patiently for a moment before he entered the door. Chung Jun was the only one in the office working at his computer. Tu Nan looked around. His sneaky movements caused Chung Jun to glance up at him. "Chung Jun." What's the matter? Tunan lowered his voice, covered his mouth and whispered. Boss hasn't been beaten recently. I know that lowering the fire is the most effective way. Let me tell you this disease. Chung Jun interrupted Tunan's words without raising his head. Too little work recently? Tunan was surprised and quickly redeemed the situation. Actually, I'm here to report to the boss. Chung Jun was indifferent. Oh, just in time, work overtime today. Behave yourself. Tunan. He really shouldn't have come in with the intention of watching the show. The boss is a wise and cunning person. How can he not see Tunan's thoughts? Ruan Jiu Jiu got off work early today and just wanted to go shopping in the shopping mall. The driver dropped her off at the shopping mall and waited for Ruan Jiu Jiu downstairs. The personal driver was a very honest uncle, who usually drives without saying a word and has a very strict mouth. Ruan Jiu Jiu plans to bring some snacks and drinks to the driver after she finishes shopping. Even if he doesn't eat them, the children in his family will like them. Ruan Jiu Jiu was used to shopping in a mall alone. The shopping guide girl smiled as soon as she saw her and respectfully leads Ruan Jiu Jiu to pick out clothes. Ruan Jiu Jiu saw that it was still early, so she strolled around for a while. When it was dark and the lights were on, she carried big bags to the car. She gave the driver snacks and drinks. The uncle, who usually does not say a word, in a very rare moment, showed a bit of embarrassment and said nothing. Refusal after refusal, Ruan Jiu Jiu simply put it in the car and said nothing, which made the driver embarrassed to say thank you. The car drove smoothly. Ruan Jiu Jiu was sitting in the back seat. She looked at her mobile phone. After thinking about it, she sent a message to Chung Jun. Ruan Jiu Jiu. What do you want to eat tonight? Chung Jun. What are the options? Ruan Jiu Jiu, you know what, it's okay. I'll just make a porridge to drink at night. Chung Jun didn't reply for a while and seemed to be protesting passively. No need to imagine, Ruan Jiu Jiu's mind immediately showed Chung Jun's depressed, dared to be angry but didn't dare to speak look. Ruan Jiu Jiu almost laughed out loud. The driver glanced at Ruan Jiu Jiu from the rearview mirror, saw that her eyebrows were smiling, and couldn't help but also smile with a pursed lip. He turned on the music player, and a soft piano sounded in the car, letting the whole person's nerves relax. The car drove smoothly in the dark, and the scenery on both sides of the road swiftly swept by, distorted into blurred silhouettes. A black off-road car gradually followed. Compared to the relaxed and happy atmosphere on Ruan Jiu Jiu's car, the owner of this car had her face frozen. In the dark night, because of the excessively stretched muscles of her face, it turned out to be a bit more hideous. If Ruan Jiu Jiu could see the owner's appearance at this time, she will surely exclaim in shock. It was Su Baiying. After many days of absence, Su Baiying's face became paler and more haggard. If 1 year ago she was a decent and generous little beauty, now it's like a long time ago, her face had withered, and her body is full of lifelessness. Since the last time she used a trick to frame Ruan Jiu Jiu, she couldn't make a counterattack. Su Baiying's only patron, Nangong Aotian, completely collapsed overnight. From an overbearing president to a hopeless second-generation trash. Similarly, Su Baiying, who was counting on her ability to turn over a new leaf, once again bets on the wrong thing, making her become even more depressed than the her in her previous life for a while. The more Su Baiying lives, the more unwilling she was. When Guyu left her, Chung Jun was also thinking about that woman and disclosed their marital status. What's so great about that Ruan Jiu Jiu? At the thought of this, Su Baiying became even more angrier. She came here today with the intention of dying together with Ruan Jiu Jiu. She will drag her to die together. The story has begun. Stay tuned to see how Ruan Jiu Jiu takes control of her fate. If you enjoyed this preview, don't forget to like, share, subscribe and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss what's next.